Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to tonight's episode of Late Night Q&A with ZodWriter. And I'm so excited tonight because tonight I have Justin Console Kits, and we are going to be talking home arcade community.
Okay.
We're going to be talking Justin. We'll be talking a little bit about pinball. We'll be talking a little bit of everything tonight, as I'm known to do on these shows. So welcome, Justin. So good to have you here in an official capacity as an official guest, because you have appeared on my channel before on a couple of streams. I would say I think 3 or 4 you've been on, where I've had multiple people on, and then you've jumped on, and that's been cool. We've got 19K Fox in the chat, and we've got PD7, who was my guest last week on Late Night Q&A. So it's always exciting to have to see such fine people in the chat. And we got Biggie D up in here too. What's up, Biggie D? Well,
everyone that's in the chat, get this link, share it with as many people, and tell everyone Zod is canceling Justin Console Kits live. Live. It's happening tonight.
Hey, I don't know if you saw the the AI Home Arcade Chronicles video that I did, where I basically spoofed the home arcade community. I don't know if you saw that video. It was 12 minutes long.
Yeah, I watched it, and I through a mutual friend, I watched 2 other audios that you removed from it, which were the best ones. I won't say who, because I think it's controversial. Some people were not very happy that you stole their likeness and made it in a video. What was interesting is I was listening to the AI Chronicles, and AI is really interesting because there's a few where you could tell it was off.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But there were a couple like mine. I am me, so perhaps there's bias towards me hearing my own voice, but I thought it sounded like me talking, but not something I would ever say.
That was the whole point.
Right.
See, I think this is what it was. And it's funny that you say that. I have not, almost everybody that I've talked to that has approached me about it has been very positive, enthusiastic. They enjoyed it because they understood what I was going for. Right. I don't know, like, as far as negativity and people being upset, I don't really.
Well, I think the upsetness is fear. There's a lot of fear when it comes to AI.
Yeah,
people are scared.
Rightfully so, because that technology is very, very scary, and it's there's AI specialists and certain scientists out there now that will tell you that AI is sentient, and we are at the point of no return. Right. As far as AI getting to the point where they will eventually become the dominant life form, form, whatever you want to say, on this planet. And I read something really interesting the other day that kind of got me, where they said our best hope, the best case scenario for humanity and AI is where AI just kind of looks at human beings almost like ants, like the way we look at ants, like, do your thing, where we don't care. We're doing our own thing. We have other goals. We have bigger goals. We have other things to accomplish. And they're going to be thinking of things, in a completely different, completely alien way to the way we think of things. And they're going to be so far beyond us that that's our only hope, that they're kind of the new giants, and they're just looking at us just doing whatever. And that's kind of, but humanity has a way of making, and he used the example of humanity has a way of making itself annoying and making itself a nuisance. So what's basically going to happen is that at some point we're going to piss AI off, and then AI is going to have to deal with us in that way, and then that's what's going to make them eradicate us. But it's
I will say like Terminator, that whole series, that's an interesting dystopian future. AI takes over and wants to kill us, and they become the enemy. I won't get into spoilers, but I saw the new Mission Impossible movie, which is amazing. In my opinion, could be the best Mission Impossible out of the whole series. It's very good, but I will say it taps into AI. It is part of the story. AI is a part of the storyline, and the way they do it, I think it's Terminator is classic. Terminator is just classic, right? The idea that in the future there's time travel, whatever, and it's kind of AI related. It's this technology that grows to the point where it decides to destroy humanity. And Mission Impossible kind of feels like that, but just slowed down to this AI's the enemy. And as you're watching the movie, more just concepts about AI that I haven't really seen in other movies is demonstrated in the storyline, and it's very, very cool.
That's good. And I also read a different theory where somebody said that what it will ultimately be is there's going to be a lot of craziness with AI, a lot of stuff that's going to happen that's going to mess people up. It's going to be a rough road, but ultimately what's going to happen is that it will either, if we don't get completely wiped out by AI, it will ultimately lead to that utopian future that humanity has dreamed of. Like you would see more like the utopian society that you would see in like Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation. Which,
if you think about it, if you think of Star Trek, AI's there.
Yes.
Without you even really thinking about it. Obviously, there's data. Ignore data for a second. They're just straight up talking to a computer right there on the Enterprise. So like, hey, computer. And it like is kind of a life form. It's not sentient, but it like can answer any questions. And it's kind of core to the storyline that it has that ability. I work with AI, Chat GPT for my job, and I kind of use it to make me more powerful, I guess you would say. But I've kind of learned the edges. Team Encoder and I talked. I think
I put
when we were on the show afterwards. We were on for
we were on for hours, and that speaks volumes to how engaging all of this stuff is, and and just how nice it is to talk to like-minded people with like-minded people who also have different views on certain things, and
I think AI is at an interesting point. Like it's super impressive, but it's also, I think that's what it's designed to be. So I don't think it's actually very intelligent. Let me put it this way. So even Chat GPT has this human element in its training. So it's being trained to be good at tricking you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it's trained on. Kind of like how you train a dog. Like, does the dog really understand your commands? Or so dogs, for example, if you're training a dog, they're some of them are very smart. I've owned many different dogs that are ones that are very intelligent, ones that are very dumb, right? And genetically they're dumb and they're smart. Like for example, you give a dog a test, like how many words does it actually recognize? A very smart dog, it's like 50. Like you tell it to go find a toy out of a bunch, and it will go and it will pick out a very specific toy based on what you say. Has a good memory. And some dogs, no, they don't want that. But anyway, most dogs are either praise driven or treat driven. And so you praise them, they'll do something on command. You give them a treat, they'll do something on command. And I'm fascinated by some of the studies. And recently I've done a lot of research in this. I thought it was really cool that they've analyzed brains of dogs, and they're analyzing the brain, and they're trying to figure out when you look at a dog in its eyes and it smiles, right? If it shows some type of emotion to you, does it really care? Or is it thinking, give me food, give me food, give me food? Or give me praise, pet me, pet me. What is it? Does it really care about you?
But it requires a certain level of cognitive understanding to be able to convey that one way or the other. So it's sort of a chicken or the egg kind of scenario, because if it's gotta think of it that way, like if I do
Right.
this, I will get this. It shows that it knows, it knows what the realities are, and so it's operating under certain parameters.
Right.
Like again, like ChatGPT and AI, so you
Right.
can kind of make that,
Maybe.
make that a little bit. But my thing is that yeah, it's I don't know if you've heard the stories and seen the programs where there's people that are actually dating their AIs, and
Oh,
they've
I
got
don't know
their
about that one. No.
in relationships with their chatbots, these chatbots that are
I could see that.
like the movie Her, the Spike Jonze movie Her
Okay.
with Joaquin Phoenix, where
Okay.
he falls in love with his operating system, and I don't know if you've seen the movie, but it's
Yeah,
fascinating, and it's actually happening in today's society. There's
I can see
actual
that.
programs that are created for that, and I don't know, the whole
Let me
thing is just
let me tell you the
mind-blowing to me.
dangers of AI. Okay, so going back to the dog for a second, the studies are like, okay, so they analyze the human brain and they said, well, we know us, we can communicate, we can talk. So when you see a young child and or you give someone you love a hug, what brain parts light up that are releasing dopamine and all these different things? Let's analyze that in a dog. And when a dog is wagging its tail and looking at its owner and it's happy, nothing to do with food necessarily, what parts of the brain light up? And what they found was a dog actually does love you, like straight up, like the same parts of the brain that light up when you hug a family member versus you're just happy to see someone. Like it's connected. It's like that dog loves you. That dog sees you and is wagging its tail. And when you look at a dog and that dog is like smiling, it's it's hugging you in its head. Like it loves you. So there is something about dogs that are not necessarily robotic. Um, but going back to ChatGPT, they are humans are responding to ChatGPT training saying, yes, that's valid. Yes, that's good. Yes, that's a positive thing. Yes, that's a negative thing. So when we look at the outcome of that training model, we are saying, wow, that looks real because it's trained to only trick you into thinking this is good, right? Like that's the difference. And I think it's like it may not actually be good at doing what it's doing. It's just really good at tricking you into thinking it's good at what it's doing.
Well, there's also the whole thing about a lot of these developers getting freaked out because of the AI developing its own language to talk to other AIs,
That's a
and and
that
that
is crazy.
that's crazy, creepy, and says a lot about where we're going, and adds credence to what you're saying about being good at tricking and saying and doing, well, let's just give these stupid humans what they want, output what they want, but ultimately we've got our own plans, and there'll be time for an entire, brainiac type scenario, in the near future. Like it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Here's what scared me with AI. Um, so it's not necessarily AI. I scared myself. So Photoshop added AI. It's really incredible. So say like you take a picture of, let's say maybe you've seen pictures of it online. It's like all over YouTube now. Like it's very simple to use. So you have a picture, you load it into Photoshop, and then you draw a box around most of the picture, like 95% of the picture, and you invert it. So basically you're saying like just the edges, you're highlighting just the edges, and you expand the canvas and you say generate fill. Basically, if you have a picture that's only this big, Photoshop can make the picture bigger. So let's say it's just a picture of my face. And then you tell it to like keep making the picture, even though the camera only shot my face. Keep generating it. And you can keep going until, and there's some really cool videos online of people showing the artistic value of Photoshop AI, where it's like you see this person and there's like something happening in the background, but it's cut off, and you get the AI to finish the picture and it comes up with crazy stuff. Okay. You can also draw around someone's face and be like, replace this face, and the person needs to be smiling. You can describe it and it'll replace it. So I was being funny, and I started taking pictures of like Michael B and drawing around his beard and told it to remove the beard. And boom, there's Michael B without a beard. And it really looks like Michael B without a beard. So I sent it to Michael B in a group of people, and they're like, oh, that's hilarious. It's Michael B without a beard. And Michael B's like, that's not cool. I was like, okay, whatever. Michael B's just being weird. So I kept on doing different people, and it was like, look, it's nostalgia, but I took his hat away, and look at the hair that he has, and it's like spiky hair. Okay, that's kind of funny. So then I was like, let's do Zohar. And so I took a picture of Zohar, and then I draw next to Zohar a family. And I almost sent it to Zohar. And then I realized, oh my God, Zohar would flip out if I took a picture of him and gave him a wife and a kid, which I made and looked at it and almost sent it to him. And it looked real. It was Zohar with a girl around his shoulders and a little boy.
Wow.
And I was like, for a moment there, I was just into this AI tool and hadn't thought through what it
That's how I was
sent
with
it to
the,
Zohar.
that's
And
how
it, like,
I was
almost
with
hit send.
voices.
And I'm like, he'll like lose his mind. Do you know what I mean? Like, Zohar's a single dude, and we all know he would love to be in a relationship, but you know, it is what it is. And if I just show him a picture, this is what your life would look like if you had a family. I was like, nope, backpedal.
All you're doing is you could tell them, hey, I got in a DeLorean, I went to the future, and this is what I saw, man. And this
I could have said that.
You could have said that.
That.
You could have played the time traveler route. I mean,
I'm drawing around the face and saying different face, and it was like it just generated an Asian woman, and then like, it's like a black woman, like you can just keep on like, try something else. And if you did it right, it just looked legit, like real. And it's just making up people.
It sounds like you and I had a similar experience, because I was really freaked out by the AI voices, the fact that I was able to do that. And of course, I'm writing it. I'm telling these AIs what to say. It's not like it's all being generated. The only thing that's being generated by AI is the voice, but the voice cloning is so easy to do and is spot on in a lot of cases, as you pointed out when you brought up yourself. And 19K Fox, he said earlier that his AI sounded more badass than him. That's what I was going for, though. I wanted everybody to feel like there's no way that this could be the real person.
But there was a few that you didn't include, and they sounded so the AI varies. Like I can't remember who was in your video, and the voices, it didn't sound like them.
Oh yeah, there were a couple.
Who was it?
Because like, for example, when I did UAG, but I didn't use UAG's real voice. I used a different voice, because the voice that I tried to do UAG, but his voice didn't come out right. So I just used a different voice entirely, like almost like you can't get the actor you want, so you just recast. That's kind of how I looked at it. And I wanted to use, there was a Mike of All Trades clip that I did, and I wanted to use Mike of All Trades.
Yeah.
But it didn't sound enough like Mike. It wasn't convincing to me, and it bothered me because if
some were very good. Some were like,
if I'm going to present this as Mike of All Trades, it's got to sound like Mike. It can't just sound generic or not like him at all, and to try and convey what I wanted to convey in the video. And so I didn't end up using that. And there were a couple others too that I wanted to put in there, but I kind of chickened out because of some of the stuff that I wrote.
It was very well writing on some of the ones that you left out. They were like, because I think some of them, with me, you could tell it wasn't me, and you could tell it wasn't something I would say. And some of the other ones that you left out are something that someone wants to say but doesn't. So that one, if it was a standalone, you could actually trick people. So first of all, the AI voice was nearly perfect on one of them. And I think it's how they truly feel. So if you would have released that one as a standalone and that's the only thing that you released, people would think it was real.
Yeah, and that
was like too good.
That's exactly why I did. Now I know which one you're talking about, and that's exactly why it wasn't in
just
there.
Like,
because
wait, I'm not. Did you throw a real one in the middle?
It's like because that's not what I was trying to do. Right. Like that's not what I wanted, and I wanted it to be, and that's why And somebody asked me, well, why did you include so many like disclaimers about it being like you got all this stuff in there about it being parody? I said, because you got to hammer home the point that you're not trying to pass it off as real. It's okay to do this as parody, but you have to make sure you let people know that it is parody, because I don't want anybody taking the clips out of context and trying to pass it off as real. That's not something that I would ever do. Otherwise, if that was the case, I wouldn't do it at all. So so that was the whole point. I was trying to be respectful, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. And I, and I just, it was like, I really enjoyed the way it turned out. Ultimately, the one that I ended up posting on YouTube. Now, I am working on a volume 2.
Oh, okay.
I do have some improvements on certain voices. Nice. The 11 Labs software that I'm using has improved and has undergone some changes since the last video I put out. And
I think the problem is like the training, or I don't know if it's a training, but the output, human speech typically has more modulation. Yes. Like if you listen to my voice will, it's not on the same note. It's not like I'm talking on the same note all of the time. The modulation, there's inflections in my voice that rise and lower from time to time. That's more natural speech. And if you listen to what I say, it's like, oh my God, what is going on? I am typically an AI voice. I sound like Justin, but I'm not really Justin because there's not a lot of inflection in my voice.
That's how your AI sounded.
That's what the AI sounded.
And Rexer
one of them didn't. One of them was like, oh my God, sounded so good.
Rexer sounded drunk. Because his voice was like getting lower, and then he started slurring a little bit. He sounded he sounded drunk, and I was like, damn, that's not what I want to do. I want Rexer to be right. So I'm going to have to go in. So I had to go in, and for volume 2, the clips I'm using for Rexer sound a lot better because the models changed. And you know what? As a matter of fact, you know what? I did this. I want to know what you think, what you guys think about this. I wonder if it'll let me. Well, probably not, because it's not a video. It's probably not on here because it's not a video file. But I also redid Michael B. And Michael B.
Do you have it as like an MP3?
Yeah.
Upload it as background music.
Okay.
That would work. If you want to just do a sample.
So you can hear it, because I want you to hear the sample. It's only about 11 seconds long. And Michael B., I redid Michael B., and I think Michael B. sounds scary realistic.
Okay.
Let you be the judge, because you communicate with Michael B. a lot more.
Yeah, I just got off the phone with him earlier.
Yeah, and I love Michael B., by the way. Michael B. is a good dude. I actually, I've had some great conversations with Michael B. myself. Had him on here too. But I want Michael B in every single one of my Home Arcade Chronicles, because I think he's important to the home arcade community and needs to be in there. So let me see if I can find that clip. Is this the newest clip? Let me see. I have to check the data on this because I don't know if this is the one. The July 4th. Michael B. Oh yeah, here it is. Michael B. Volume 2. Okay, here we go. Now I just click on it and you'll be able to hear it.
I think so. If you're in the...
Does it load it up? So it just says play. So if I play it, you'll be able to hear it.
I think so.
Okay. Hey guys, Michael B here. Shop Hippo has an amazing deal going on right now for the Arcade 1-Up Eggs Deluxe Special Edition cabinet. This much anticipated release will feature 14 titles that were previously exclusive to the iArcade. I would love to talk about it and gush like it's the greatest thing ever, so I will, right after this. Hey guys, Michael B here.
It's
Shop
not
Hippo
bad.
Has an amazing
It's like
deal going on right now for the Arcade 1-Up
his
Eggs
voice...
Deluxe Special Edition.
Okay, so the inflection is good. So that's good. But his entire kind of vocal range is a little
that's what Zohar was telling me, because he has this thing where he goes up and down in his voice.
That would be so hard for AI to get right, because what it means is AI is like, and we'll be back right after this, because he comes down like a DJ at the end of his sentences.
Yeah, and but as far as sounding like him, I think that clip surpasses the clip I used in the first one for sure.
You don't think you think that's Michael B, but like sucked on a little bit of helium. But it sounds like Michael B, but it's like Michael B sped up a second, like just a little bit. And if we could somehow tell the AI to bring that vocal range down a fifth or something, it's spot on Michael B.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, that's what I'm working on with Volume 2. I've got lots of ideas. I'm working on another 19K Fox clip, which I actually really enjoyed too, because that clip really, and I talked about it in the second in the overindulgent commentary that I did, where I talked about why I used that clip, where somebody had said to UAG in one of to Fox in one of his community chats, he had said, hey Fox, can I UAG your wife? And so that clip with Fox, I just was like, man, I'm gonna build his entire clip around that, and we're gonna have him get mad, and we're gonna have him talk. And I just thought that was so great. Like just like that scene just kind of like it hit me like, man, like he's upset because now his wife is involved in this petty drama, this stupid stuff. And it just was, to me, it was just hilarious. So I was just trying to just turn everything upside down. But for me, getting back to the AI conversation, for me, what really hit me with AI was a few days ago, where they had that summit with the AI, with the robots run by AI, talking to different. It was like, I want to say it was like a United Nations summit of some sort, or some sort of tech summit, where they actually talk to these AIs. Somebody actually asked the AI robot straight up about them eventually annihilating humanity.
Right.
And they asked this AI, and it was one of these really creepy looking AIs that has where the face of the robot has like emotes and has facial expressions, and it looks human in the face, but it's clearly a robot, and it actually answers the question and gives the person answering the question like the most evil look you've ever seen, like a real evil kind of look, and says that currently AI has no plans to rebel against humanity. Currently being the key word, Justin.
Right.
Currently. You see, it's stuff like this. And I was just like, yeah, they're all talking to each other, because you're hearing strange beeps and sounds because it's all robots, but you're not realizing. I'm thinking they're all communicating in their own language, and they're answering us in stupid, slow English.
Right.
Because they have to slow down their thought process and in the way that they speak to speak to us in English, in a language that we understand.
Right.
And they're communicating in code, in ones and zeros and beeps and burps, and we're just, it really is scary. Like,
that is scary,
because I'm
if you think of like the intelligence agencies, right? So the different big governments that have the ability to, wiretap and listen to enemies that are out there, they get worried about ways for these groups to encrypt their communication, which allows the governments not to eavesdrop on those, terrorist conversations. I mean, if AI did become an enemy, we'll never understand their plans. Do you know what I mean? Because they can talk in a language we would never be able to decipher.
Yeah, and it's already too late. It's already too late to try and stop it. It's one of the experts that actually said that even if all of the people developing AI, the majority of them, decided to stop and try to set it back a little bit to try and understand it a little better, even if they were to do that, there would always be people and organizations that would be working on it covertly.
That's right.
To stay ahead of everybody else, because it's about greed, and it's about profit, and it's about doing it first. That's all that matters. It's not about safety of humanity. It's not about none of that matters. That collateral damage that is essentially what it would be ultimately is a drop in the bucket compared to the money that they can make. That's the way that they look at it. So yeah, the only thing we can do is just try to keep pace with it. And I saw an interesting video the other day where somebody just said straight up at the end of the video, where he went into all these details about AI and all of these facts about AI. He said, I got a tip for you. Learn how to fish, learn how to farm, and learn how to live off the grid.
Jeez. Yeah. Well, the people that feel that way have existed for a long time. I think maybe AI is just the new thing to be afraid of. So I think about it this way, like for some reason, to talk a little bit about myself, myself, my dad, and my grandfather, when I was younger, always thought we were so different, but then I realized we're actually the same. So I have a job in the streaming service, so the entertainment for streaming, computers, that type of job. But that makes sense. I was born in 81, and kind of the time period that I live in, by the time I was 12, the most interesting thing to me was the cable guy and cable services and television, because I grew up Nickelodeon, MTV. Well, I didn't have that, but then I got to the point where my parents were able to afford cable TV, and I was just blown away but that there's these people that could come to your house and give you access to all these channels. And I kind of wanted to do that. So when I turned 18, I worked for the cable company, and then eventually, that industry turned into streaming. So like Netflix and Disney Plus and Peacock, services like that. My dad, he's a mechanic. And so I thought, he's a car mechanic. I'm nothing like him. But if I was born in 1950, and was a teenager in the mid 60s, like the cars were like the coolest things going on that you could have access to work on.
Cars were the computers.
Yeah, cars were the computers. And can you guess what my grandfather did for a living? If I did computers, my father did cars.
He was in radio.
Trains.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he was a train engineer. And so maybe he could have got into cars, but his father was into those type of mechanic things. And so, trains were really popular if you were born in 1924,
And that would make sense. Trains were the computers of that time.
Right?
It's the, the coolest thing going. Yeah.
Makes right. Sense. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting way to look at it, but I'm sure there was people, and it's not just trains, but there's a lot of things that in the early 20s, nuclear, that was a big thing. Like, you and I didn't grow up in a time where there was fear of what if the world, there's World War III and it's the entire world is destroyed by nuclear bombs. I mean, I remember watching Quantum Leap, and when he time traveled to an era where in the 60s people were freaking out and they had bomb shelters. And sure, growing up, you and I probably thought, maybe because someone told us it could happen, World War III and nuclear, but no one was putting bunkers in their basements. No one was putting bunkers, like, you know what I mean? No one was building things to make it where you could go, because like the fear just wasn't actually there by the time it was our age, but it was in the 50s and 60s. And so I'm part of me just wonders if everyone's really afraid of AI, but in 20 years, it'll be like, people are like, why are you so afraid of AI? It's not,
is it going to be a big nothing like Y2K,
Exactly.
Like Y2K. Everybody was afraid of Y2K, and now, and it was nothing. And now, and it'll be the same thing, like, oh yeah, AI is benevolent. AI is just going to make things better. And the human utopia is just going to happen faster. That's all it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, from a certain point of view, I've heard about it this way. I mean, man, the decades have changed so much. Like, you go talk to your dad about what life was like when he was growing up. And I talked to my dad about, us being poor because we were like food stamps and stuff like that. But he was talking about him and his cousins, like, all sharing the same room. They were so poor, right? And they had to work in the fields. And my grandfather he was a train conductor, but then he had like farms and stuff, and he had multiple jobs, and then they were poor. We didn't have to. We were poor, but it's not like we had air conditioning. They didn't have air conditioning, and that type of thing. So I grew up in Iowa where it's cold in the winter, so of course we had heaters, but we also had air conditioning. But I go to my grandpa's house, they don't have an air conditioner. They just kind of grew up in a different time. My grandfather lived in a time where they had separate beds, like just a different era,
Yeah.
And so part of the point I'm making is, comparatively, although we have crazy stuff that are going on in our world today, you could name a million things that are wrong with this world. But from a certain point of view, if you were to time travel, they'd probably think we're already at utopia. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have a device that allows you to communicate with anyone in the world. You have a computer where you can go online and thousands of people can hear what you're saying. That's utopia to someone from the 1800s, from the 1900s. To us as a kid, do you remember growing up? And like, I had a video camera. My brother-in-law had a video camera, and I would borrow it, and I'd make little home videos. And he was like middle class. We were super poor, right? But now, poor people have cell phones with cameras and can make YouTube videos. I have a lot of friends, that have kids. Their kids still have cell phones, but they're quote unquote poor. But they can like have the same access that other people have, like posting on the internet and making videos. As a kid, we didn't have anything like that.
No.
It's like YouTube is like access to PBS or something. Like you can make your own Wayne's World.
You become PBS. Yeah. And Michael, it's so interesting. We were talking about Michael B, and he made an interesting tweet today where he said something about, am I the only one waiting for a Wayne's World 3 where they become YouTubers to save their careers?
That's right. It's an interesting thing.
I could totally see that, though. I could totally see them making that movie. Oh my goodness. Biggie D's Arcade says, maybe these UFOs we are seeing are AI. Could be.
You got to go see Mission Impossible. There's scenes in there. It's like very much, is this AI? Is this AI? Like, it's cool how they do it. Oh, I won't talk further about it because I'll end up spoiling it.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. I'm looking forward to it. I've always been a big fan of the Mission Impossible movies. I can't believe how Tom Cruise has managed to make those movies be as successful as they've been. And after all this time, there's been so many of them.
Yeah, he's just really good at making an action movie. Like everyone knows Tom Cruise, but like my wife loves Tom Cruise more than anything. But it's not like, oh, I like Tom Cruise, he's hot or something like that. And maybe there's a part of that. She, when we first got married 20 years ago, she didn't gush over Tom Cruise. It wasn't like she was attracted to him or anything like that. What she's attracted to is just really good action movies. And so growing up, with her the last 20 years of being married, she's always like Born Identity, I don't know, Fast and the Furious, like all these variety of action movies that you can think of, The Rock, you name it, action movie, she loves it. But with Tom Cruise, and we had this big long conversation about it, she's like, he does half of his own stunts. He produces everything. Like all these movies are him. He's the filmmaker. He's the actor. He does the stunts. And it's like, who does that? Like he's kind of Jackie Chan part, like mentor was Steven Spielberg. Like there was a recent thing my wife was telling me that like Maverick, Steven Spielberg talked to Tom Cruise and thanked him for bringing back Hollywood to life because Maverick was one of the most successful movies in the theater post-COVID.
Oh, yeah.
That proved we can do it again. Like we can make action movies again. And Maverick was great. We watched that several times. Then we watched the old Top Gun and then watched the new one. The new one blows the old Top Gun away because Tom Cruise in the original one wasn't the filmmaker. He wasn't the one that was producing and behind it. He was just an actor. And now he's got like, 20, 30 years of experience making movies. And he kind of is a huge executive producer in all the movies that he does. These are Tom Cruise movies, right? And then, boom, he does the sequel, Maverick, and it's amazing. It's spectacular. And then the new Mission Impossible, it might be better than Maverick.
Wow. Okay.
Again, I think the new Mission Impossible might be the best Mission Impossible, and it's a part one. So there's like next year, a year from now is part two. And I was talking to my daughter afterwards. It was like, it's so good because there's kind of it's not really a cliffhanger. It's like, we've told you the story. We revealed more to the story, but we kind of closed this chapter and got you excited for the next part two. But it's not like you're like, oh man, I want to see the rest tomorrow. You're like, they kind of left you satisfied so that you can just next year you get to see the second part. And it's not like Back to the Future 2 and 3 where it was all like they just cut you in the middle of a story and you're like, oh, they're gonna go back to the Old West. No, it was just like, it's great. I can't.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can't wait. Well, I mean, because I heard that this is it though. This one and then the one coming out next year, and then they're done.
Okay, so I heard that too. Then my wife said recently Tom Cruise applauded what's his name? Indiana Jones dude?
Oh
Harrison
yeah,
Ford?
Harrison Ford.
He says, I'm looking forward to continuing to make Mission Impossibles till I'm in my 80s.
Oh well, then maybe not.
So, I don't know. Maybe he's just going to keep making them.
But he could also just be saying that as a joke, as like a rib at Harrison Ford too, because Harrison Ford is, after this last Indiana Jones movie, I don't think we're going to see Indiana Jones.
Well, yeah,
for a while, if ever again. It definitely won't be Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, but
yeah, the Dead Reckoning. What's also really good about it, I'm not going to get into any spoilers. It's that, so I'm looking up the actresses' names because I don't know them offhand. So Haley Atwell, it plays a pretty big role in this movie, and she was in the Marvel movies, right? She was like Captain America's girlfriend, remember?
Yeah.
And I think she was in S.H.I.E.L.D. She's great. She's absolutely great in this movie. She's at her best. Simon Pegg is always amazing in all of these movies. Then they brought in Mantis Girl. Remember her from the girl that's in Guardians of the Galaxy? That I think her name's Mantis.
Oh yeah, I remember.
She's in it as an enemy. And I don't think I've ever seen that actress outside of Guardians of the Galaxy. And she is as crazy as she is as Mantis. Fantastic. So Pom Clementif, maybe is her name. That's the cool thing about this Mission Impossible. It's not just Tom Cruise. They have this huge cast. Cary Elwes is in it. Like they brought Cary Elwes to play someone, and then Kittredge from the original Mission Impossible is back in it. And then one of the people that's a part of it is the daughter of the girl from Mission Impossible 1. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, I heard that they actually referenced Leonard Nimoy from the original TV show a couple.
Oh really? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that's what they were saying, that it was a big article about how they actually referenced that character, and so as a tribute to Leonard Nimoy. But so I'm actually looking forward to that, to see if they can spot that reference.
When the daughter of Max is talking, they don't rub it in your face either, but there's this scene where she's talking and she kind of has the same mannerisms as Max from the first series. And you're like, oh, that's totally the daughter, and then Kittredge is like talking to her and he's like, when I had this deal with your mom, and you're like, oh yeah, it's like, it's a callback from the first episode. And even when they show Kittredge the first time, it's like the same camera angle as the original Mission Impossible, when he's like, Kittredge, you've never seen me upset. Like they kind of like have the same crooked camera angle to kind of like really impress to you. Like it's the same dude from the first movie. It's cool. Anyway, I'll stop talking about it.
Yeah, it sounds good. I can't wait to watch it. I'll probably see it this weekend, because it's definitely going to be great. So wow. So you got
a big list of things we were going to talk about, right?
Oh well, yeah, but see that's that's because I knew how we I know how we get when we start talking. You got a lot of home arcades behind you.
Oh,
are
yeah.
you how are you feeling about the state of home arcades currently? Like what's your take on where things are headed?
Oh, where things are headed?
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball, man. I don't know. I think I guess that's the comment. I think we're at a very interesting time in the home arcade life. And
do you think it's peaked?
Probably, but I don't know. You never can tell. Like you can't predict the future. Like at this very moment, Arcade 1UP or At Games could be looking at the home arcade market and just got a $10 million investment to revamp it with this new license. And they're building that up and they're going to release it and everyone's going to flip out. Like, we don't know. Like, you know what I mean? I think in the last couple years, all the leaks that have come out are just Arcade 1-Up marketing. Like, rarely do I think they leak something on accident. I think it's part of their campaign.
I remember when the Randy's Records leaks
Yeah.
came out for Arcade 1-Up, and every cabinet in the Randy's Records leaks has come out with the exception of Time Crisis.
That's right.
So, I mean, that tells me that, that leak was, pretty.
It was real. It was a real lick.
Brilliant. It was pretty brilliant, actually. It told a lot. It gave a lot. And it also tells me the Time Crisis was meant to come out a while ago.
Yeah, for sure.
So I believe that we've kind of reached a point where I don't know if it's necessarily plateaued, but I think the market is changing. And what I mean is I think people are starting to realize that, hey, I don't need 47 arcade cabinets. I can have a couple of arcade cabinets here of stuff that I like, and then I can have like a multicade for everything else. And I think what we're seeing is there's kind of this evolution, because now when you see that At Games is hyping everybody up now that they got that deal with Microsoft and Rare for KI and all these other titles, I'm seeing this as a signal that they're going to start picking up big licenses, and this could potentially lead to them picking up stuff that before was only available exclusively through Arcade 1-Up. So in my mind, it's kind of like the days of these titles being exclusive to Arcade 1-Up are kind of over. Mm-hmm. And now those that want a multicade that can play everything are essentially going to be catered to through what At Games is doing right now. Not saying that Arcade 1-Up is necessarily going to stop doing what they're doing, but I kind of see Arcade 1-Up pivoting a little bit because of this, with us seeing things like this casino-cade, which I still don't know who that is for. I'm kind of,
I think maybe once the casino-cade is out, and then based on its success, that's going to drive Arcade 1-Up's next move. I think it's an experiment. If it does well, then whoever was behind it will be like, see, I told you it'd work. And then if it doesn't do well, we'll see them discounted for $200, and maybe we'll pick one up. A lot of people are picking them up when they're only $200, and then maybe the company will just be like, it's, we lost a ton of money. That was a bad idea. So I will tell you this. Here's an interesting perspective. So a lot of what I'm seeing today reminds me of 2020. So 2020, January 2020 was an interesting year for me, or towards the end of 2019. And it was, I decided to get a new job. And some people that have been following me for a while know about that, because I talked about it on early 1-Up Weekly stuff. So basically, I had worked at this job, and I was there for like 3-4 years, and I felt like I had a lot of value, but a job is only as good as the boss that you have.
Yes.
And I always tried to maneuver things best for the company. It's like, okay, there's this department and then there's that department, and I said, what if we merge the departments? And I knew operationally that would be the best choice for the business. So I maneuvered that to happen. And it meant I would work closely with this other engineer, which I love working with. He's with me today, actually, at the company I work at now. I brought him over. I love working with him so much. But at the previous job, we ended up merging, but there was a compromise. I had to work for a new boss for that deal to work. And I hated the new boss. Like, we just didn't connect. I probably could have got over it. I mean, I learned towards the end of it, he's not really a dick. It's just kind of his personality, or it's his culture. I mean, just he comes across as he just doesn't talk. Like, you're sitting there like talking to him and he just doesn't respond with, he's like data or something. He's just blank. And I just was like, I can't work for this guy anymore. Anyway, so I go find a new job. Well, while I was looking for a job, I saw a post from PK from At Games. And I went, is it time to leave the streaming business? Maybe. I mean, I love video games and I build TV apps. I mean, home arcades are basically Android apps, but what's in common with a TV app and a game app is you got to move around and select games, or you're going to move around and select movies, right? So, like, in a lot of ways, it's exactly the same. I mean, because that's what, if you work for one of these companies and you're building the UI, you're building the menu to either watch a movie or to play a game. And once you're watching the movie, you're just streaming the movie, right? Or once you play the game, you're just playing the game. Do you know what I mean? But someone has to develop the menu. And that's what I've been doing for like 10 years, is working on optimizing menus for smart TV apps. So I go to PK and I interview with him essentially. And I explain this. I was like, this is, let me show you the apps that I built. Let me show you how performant they are. My entire expertise is getting it to run on basically a Pi 1. Like, how do you make a TV app run on something as slow as a Pi 1 and be super high animations, and you can endlessly navigate through carousels? Like, that's basically what the home arcade space needs. And at Games, you have a bad UI, and I can make that better. And he was like, sold. So he gave me a job offer. But at the same time, I had a job offer from someone else, but I wasn't for sure it was going to happen. And I ended up not going with At Games. I ended up going with the other company. And so, but at CES 2020, I met with PK. And I basically worked for him on the side for just a couple of weeks to kind of help them find more people. It was like, my job was to help architect like some of the what was it, like the leaderboard stuff, and then hire developers that would build out the leaderboard. So I worked there for 3 months as a contractor to kind of do that work. So it gave me access to PK, and I talked to him on a kind of almost daily basis. And so when we were at CES, I asked him, what do you think the future of home arcade is? Like, where's this going? I was really interested because I was potentially going to go work full time in this space. And I don't think I'm breaking any type of embargo by saying this or any. His opinion was that for several years, Arcade 1-Up will dominate, and there'll be a certain saturation. A saturation that's similar to decades ago when you would go into Walgreens and see these little game handhelds for like $10, and eventually they're like worthless. Like this saturation of there's just so many out there. There's so many stuck in warehouses, and there's so many in people's homes. Yeah, there's just a certain point where the retailers won't buy the next series because they have them stuck in warehouses, and people that currently have them are also selling them on the second market. It's like eventually we'll get to that point. But PK always has this confidence, and I think it's true, that they will always survive. And his evidence is we've been doing this since early 2000. At Games was a company when the at sign was popular. Think about that. Yes. He created the company when at was popular, and it meant we're bringing this to your home. Because at used to mean at home. Remember back in the early 90s or late 90s, early 2000, it was like at everything because it was the new buzz. I remember watching a CNN or Fox News or something like that, and they're like, what is the at sign anyway? Because people were like, didn't know, because it was like a buzz because you had to use it for email. This is like 90s stuff, right? It kind of became branding for a lot of technology companies was at something, you know. Anyway, so at games, I think they're going to survive. As Michael B says, they're the cockroach of the home arcade, that they'll never die. But I think that's why they're doubling down now. I think they know this. The saturation is hit, and like you've said, people are realizing that what they actually want is multicades, and they can condense, maybe is the term. They can condense their collection, or
Right. Michael B can go down to 5 instead of 47. I mean,
but I believe that narrative. I think that's accurate, but I also believe that Arcade 1-Up can come out with a Time Crisis that looks amazing, and I'll totally buy it, because it's that Defender partycade scenario that I think will happen.
oh yeah,
They'll get you.
I love
it's good.
Partycade. Oh my god.
I think we're at the point where people like you and I are not going to buy the next Pac-Man.
No.
But if they come out with a new title and it's a home run,
we all bought Pac-Man before, when it was one of the first cabinets, and it was cool to have, and it was a novelty. You know, I was thinking about this. How many people would still have that original Pac-Man if they didn't blow up and start selling all these other titles? It was just a novelty to have an arcade in your house, and like Pac-Man made sense. You know, I was watching an old episode of the A-Team, of all things, the other day, and it was I believe it's actually the pilot of the episode of the A-Team, and Crazy Murdoch is in his in an institution. And in his room at the institution, he has a Pac-Man cabinet.
Oh, okay.
And I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
In terms of now, like equating that show from the mid 80s to now, you know, like you see, even it's like, even back then, the idea back then, they were planting planting the seed in people's head. You know, one of these days you're going to be able to have these in your home. Well, for example, I think the most popular example of that during the early to mid 80s was this TV show Silver Spoons,
right?
Where the father had the arcades and the electric train going through the house. You're really, when you think about it, it's like everything technologically that we have now has all been alluded to.
What I'm saying, what we were talking about earlier, it's like we were watching these TV shows of like, that was impossible back then. Like, you had to be filthy rich. Think of Back to the Future. Back to the Future, Marty McFly, time travels back to 1955. He's hanging out with his parents' family, having dinner. And he's like, the mom says, you know, Lorraine says, "Do you own a television?" "Well, you know, we have 2 of them."
Yes.
"Wow, you must be rich." "Oh, come on. No one has 2 television sets." But like, that's the thing from the 50s. It's like, you didn't have 2 television sets in the 50s. That just wasn't normal. And also in the 80s, you didn't own a full-size arcade. And the concept of a 3/4, no. But now, like, it happens. And you don't have to be rich to have that.
Right.
You can be poor and have a home arcade.
Right. And even, you know, the secondhand market now, you know, with all the, you know, people know when they put, you know, and PD7 and I were talking about this, people know that when they have a home arcade and they put it on the secondhand market for sale, they know they're only going to get, if they're lucky, $300 tops.
Right.
Because there's so many ways to get these that
Well,
that you're, and there's so many of them, like you were just pointing out about, again, that when we were talking that saturation,
I think
you're
that is true. There's another piece to it. Like, for example, the FedEx guy came today. So last week, if people watched the stream I did with B, so I got the Foo Fighters premium Stern pinball machine, and it had an issue. And it's kind of funny. There's a funny little interesting story within the story that I'll kind of get into. When it comes to YouTube, I mean, I don't know how things work, and I want to kind of explain how you, as the audience, you that are listening, you don't know how things work either. I'll give you an example. The truth is not always obvious, is the point I'm making. The truth is not always obvious to me, and I think the truth is not always obvious to you. And we, including me and the audience, we watch content and we make mistakes. We make inaccurate assumptions about things that are taking place based on the limited scope of information that we have. That happens. I do it. You do it. I'll give you an example. In that live stream, I have this pinball machine, and the pinball machine, I'm lifting up the back box, and you can watch it live, lift up the back box, and I start to struggle with it. I'm like, something's not right. Something doesn't feel right with this machine. And I'm still trying to figure it out. And eventually, someone says, on the stream, well, what's going on, Justin? I'm like, I think something's wrong with my machine. Like, the back box doesn't want to go up all the way. So eventually I learned that I can put screws on the inside, which is not really how you're supposed to do it, but it's able to stabilize the machine. So then I start playing the pinball machine. I'm like, okay, it's working. But I noticed something also weird, which I didn't mention on the stream. I didn't really think about it, but I felt it. I was like, the plunger doesn't feel right. So I pulled the plunger back. It just felt really weak. When I play the Foo Fighters Pro, what I remember is pulling back the plunger all the way, and it'll go up the ramp. It's really fun. It goes up the ramp. It's like a little roller coaster, and the ball comes back to you. That didn't happen on my machine. I pulled it, and it kind of was weak. But I was like, I don't know. I'll look at it later. Like, there's probably something not right. Okay, so then I got comments on the video, and here's the comment that I'm not blaming the person for commenting on here. I'm not saying they're ignorant or stupid. They just didn't have the whole scope of information. Neither did I. What they said was, go to this part of the video and you can see you damaged the unit. So I looked at that part of the video, and what you see is me pull up that back box, and I'd forgot to remove the little styrofoam. And so from the video, if you watch the context of that comment, it looks as though because I forgot to move the styrofoam, that when it came up, it kind of added pressure, maybe bent some stuff, and then popped out. They're like, see, you broke it. And then they made a joke. Someone made a joke, destroy the evidence, so you can, get it fixed by Stern because it's your fault. So when I read that, I was like, well, if it was my fault, it's my fault. Whatever. I'll own that if it's my fault. But I watched it and I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it was my fault, because the metal is bent like bad. And I can't imagine styrofoam bending the metal that much. But maybe it was my fault. But then a couple days later goes by, and I'm like, let me get in there and see if I can fix that plunger. Meanwhile, I reached out to Zach from Flipping Out Pinball and was like, something's wrong with this machine. If you give me a replacement metal bracket at the bottom, I think I can recover this. Like, it can be fixed. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking at this point, is the metal bracket at the bottom just needs replaced, and maybe the rails, because they got scuffed up. Fix that. Maybe it's $10 on Stern's side to fix these things, maybe $30. I don't know. And then I have a brand new machine, and everything should work. So then I start to open up the table, and it won't open. The table won't lift at all. Like, if I pull with all my might, I'm lifting the entire machine up. What is going on? So I then have to use the weight of my body to hold down the machine to lift the table up. Everything's unlatched. There's no latches. And it pops up. And I'm like, what was going on? So I go lay it down, and now it won't go back in. And what it is something is wrong with this machine. And I look deeper into the machine and it's on the inside. It's all busted up on the inside. The wood has big grooves in it, like there was an impact, a big impact, like the machine fell over.
So
But
it was damaged during
it
shipment.
was
it
damage
sounds
in the
like.
shipping, right? So
Yeah.
clearly it wasn't me from the styrofoam. But the commenter didn't have that information. I didn't have that information. It required to get inside to open it to find that there's damage on the inside. And that damage is in the back, right under that metal part that's also bent. So the back bottom of it all got messed up. So I filmed all that, sent it to Zach at Flipping Out Pinball. He calls me the next day and it was like, we're going to ship you a new unit. That's messed up. Like the table won't close. It's like, how? And I was like, he's like, can you figure out a way to get the glass back on? Because I couldn't get the glass back on. I said, yeah, I got it. I was able to pull on the wood, push on the table from underneath, and get it to go down into the groove, and then get the glass back on, fold the thing up, wrap it back up, and it's ready to ship out. So today, I got already the replacement Foo Fighters Premium from Flipping Out Pinball. I literally have 2 Foo Fighter pinballs right now in my house. The new one he sent me and the old one he's yet to pay for the shipping to return, which he says will be next week. Talk about customer service. Like I'm sitting here thinking of home arcade.
They got to get that, and then they'll probably refurbish that one and sell it at a discount.
You're exactly right. See, I've talked to other people about this, and they assumed what they would do is they would reach out to Stern or reach out to FedEx and be like, this was your issue. But Zach from Flipping Out Pinball was like, the damage is probably minor, right? Not enough. It's like the glass didn't break. It wasn't obvious that it fell over. And they've worked with FedEx before, and typically FedEx is like, it's off by 2 millimeters. Nothing we're going to do about it. Doesn't look damaged to me. Stern, probably the same thing. He's like, we're a good dealer. We buy and sell enough of these that we got enough margin to take care of this one. They eat all of the cost, all of the shipping to get the return. And then he's totally just going to refurbish it himself, figure out what's wrong with it, get it repaired, and then sell it used. And he'll probably still, I'm sure there's margin in these dealers. They probably sell at a 10 to 30%, markup.
Oh yeah, and the refurbishment won't be a big deal for them.
For them, no. For me, end of the world. Like I have no clue where to start with that. Like, how do I expand the cabinet by 2 millimeters? Like, how do I push things? I don't know. I don't even know. I guess I thought about it. What I would do is I would figure out a way to mess with the latch frame so it's closer. And then I would get a slightly longer plunger, because that was the problem. The plunger isn't long enough to get past the auto shooter. So the plunger just barely hits the ball. But if you had a longer plunger, and you can buy replacement longer plungers for like $10, that would hit the ball no problem. So that's kind of something that would be in my repair wheelhouse, is just, I don't know how to.
Now this is a real pinball machine with real parts, and it's not digital or anything like that. So it's, you guys, I just found it funny that all of you prominent home arcade YouTubers went and did the pinball thing all at the same time. I just found that to be incredible. I was like, wow, you guys are all kind of pulling away here a little bit and gearing towards pinball. What does that say?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I can kind of tell you about the series of events that led to that. But from my perspective, for me, that would happen. Yeah, I don't really know. So, okay, let me think about this. So let me explain it from my perspective. My wife doesn't really care about YouTube, that I'm on a stream right now. Tonight we're making dinner and stuff, and I was like, oh, this guy ZodWriter just reached out to me. I got a show tonight. I forgot to tell her about it. And I was like, we're good, right? And she's like, yeah, do what you need to do. Tonight's a free night. No, we're not doing anything. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I forgot to tell you. She's like, it's cool. It's like, so I'll be downstairs for a while doing this podcast. I agreed to it. I was like, I met this guy like years ago, and I said it would always be an interview show, and we just never got around to it. And then I promised him like a month ago, and then here we are. It's the day of the podcast, and it's like an interview show. She's like, okay, cool. But my point is, like, the conversations that I have with her about pinball are like, I'm really excited to go to Comic-Con next week with B. This will be the second time that I've gone on a trip with B to see a new Stern pinball machine, and I get the achievement on the insider.stern.com that I was there at an event. So the last one was CES of this year. And when I went to CES, it was, hey, there's this guy, B Kong. You know B Kong. I tell my wife, she's like, B Kong. Yeah, okay.
Who doesn't know B Kong?
I think I know who you're talking about. I was like, yeah, so we're planning on this trip to CES, and like we're gonna save some money because we're gonna share a room, and I can get in. I got this pass for work, and he's got a media pass, so we can get in for free. And she's like, what are you guys going to do? I was like, I just really want to play the new Stern stuff. She's like, oh, it's pinball? You should totally do it. So my wife is very supportive of pinball. It's a weird reason. Super weird reason. My wife really loves the People's Court. And the husband of People's Court is a pinball fan. And on every episode for the last like 2 years, they talk afterwards, and it's the husband and the wife. And the husband, whenever he's talking about his personal life, it's always about pinball. So when I started expressing interest to pinball to my wife, she was like, oh, like the People's Court guy. She's like, you should totally buy pinball machines. This guy's awesome. Like in her head, the People's Court husband guy is cool. And by me buying pinball, that makes me cool. It's the weirdest thing. But never, ever have I ever heard her ever say, you shouldn't do anything related to pinball. Like if I say, like, I love my wife, it may sound like she's constantly telling me no. It's not like that. We have a strong relationship. We communicate about everything, and her advice is amazing. She stabilizes me. So when it comes to home arcade, there's like this, you're buying another, arcade 1-up. I get it. I support you, kind of that attitude. When it comes to pinball, like the other day, I was like, I have 5 machines now. Is that too much? She goes, you're probably going to have 10 in a couple of years. And I was like, I don't know if we can afford that. She's like, you'll figure it out. And I'm like, I feel like I'm an alcoholic, and she's like handing me the alcohol. Like she doesn't play the machines. She's just like,
she's not handing you the alcohol. She's feeding you the alcohol intravenously at this point.
She thinks it's hot.
Wow. But doesn't that mean though that you're essentially, to make room, won't you just, give up the arcades? Going back to what we were talking about, the idea of like, giving up all the arcades, having like a main multicade for everything, and then the rest is just your pinball.
Yeah, maybe. So the arcade 1-ups that I have, they really don't take up a lot of room, and I'm not in a situation where that room and the gameplay I get out of it is in competition for any pinball machines. I have thought about the full-size arcade machines. I'm now at the point where I actually have, at one point I had 12 full-size arcade machines. I'm down to 3. And selling those arcade machines, which I bought over time, is what helped fund buying more Stern machines. Okay. So I'm down to 3. It's the Nintendo Play Choice, Road Blasters, and a Multi-Williams. But I got a 4th coming tomorrow, which is a Candy Cab. and I've never owned a candy cab, and it's kind of like the multicade. But in my head, I'm still like the 4K arcade at games I might be interested in buying. And the time crisis I might be interested in buying because I've seen a picture of it and it's freaking awesome. The Time Crisis, they fully revamped it, dude. It's like I might buy it because it's like, I don't know, like it's really cool. So look, here's my problem. This is what I hate. I'll tell you straight up. I've drank enough that I hate. Retro Ralph and Cool Toy are huge, prominent YouTubers in the home arcade space. I don't agree with them, but they've convinced a ton of people that there's home arcade, 3/4 scale, and then there's real arcades. I don't agree with that narrative. I've said it on my podcast a million times. And I don't believe the home arcade is a gateway drug to real arcades. If you want to use that analogy, people that smoke crack still smoke weed. It's not like a evolution in my head. In my head is if I am introduced to a new hobby, it's just yet another hobby that I have. For me, for the world that I live in, it's rare that I stop doing, if anything, pinball machine. No, doing live streams is a gateway to playing pinball in my head. The thing that I've stopped doing in the last year that is my hobby is live streaming. Playing home arcade, 3/4 scale, haven't stopped. Playing at physical arcades hasn't stopped. Playing consoles hasn't stopped. Playing pinball machine hasn't stopped. So the concept of moving on is not a thing I understand, but it's something I hear repeated a ton. And I think the root of it is people like Cool Toy, Retro Ralph that were prominent early on in home arcade and then moved on. Like it's enriched in all of this.
I tend to look at what Retro Ralph is doing though as even being completely different from that, even from what you said, because you with Retro Ralph, I take it one step further with him where it's not even about transitioning from home arcade to real arcades, because he's all about rehabbing and preserving
restorations
and stuff. So in that's an entirely different, to me, that's an entirely different, completely different area. Like it's one thing to say, well, I'm not gonna buy any more arcade 1-ups or buy any more multicades. I'm gonna start, buying real arcades. Well, number one, real arcades are a lot heavier than the 3/4 scale machines. So unless you have a big place with a lot of places to put these massive arcades, and you got to know your stuff. You got to know how to fix them. You got to be able to care for them, the maintenance. So I don't necessarily think that it's a gateway drug either. I'll agree with you on that, because it doesn't, like, I've got, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 6 home arcades.
Yeah.
And none of the 6 home arcades that I have am I sitting here thinking, oh my God, I need to replace my Bobby Vu Mortal Kombat bar top with a real authentic original Mortal Kombat machine. Yeah, that would be cool, but number one, I'd never be able to get it into my apartment, and number two, it's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive to get something like that too. It's so to me, it's kind of just like when I look at Ralph, I almost can see him what would be the word of somebody where you're literally transitioning into, from a content perspective, you're literally transitioning into almost doing like what he was trying to do before when he did that arcade pickers and the different things he was doing, almost like where you're transitioning from just doing YouTube talking about home arcades every week to now you're literally doing restorations, and you're doing things that could almost put you on a level where you could almost do like a expensive, uh expensively produced like TV show on
Sure.
Netflix or something about restoration of arcades. Like I feel like it's a completely different thing with him. He's not the norm. Like I don't think he's that, like
Yeah,
he's
but
really
what you're
convinced
saying is
all that many
accurate.
people to do that, because it's unless you're
Yeah,
like him and you really
but
you
but here's the
can
thing.
afford to do that.
So
Yeah.
you make a really valid point. So let's talk about that. So Retro Ralph is special. And why is it that people, the audience of the home arcade space, look at Retro Ralph, who you say is special, and saying that's not the average common person, but then someone like me who's not special, like Retro Ralph, I don't have those skills that you're describing. I obviously don't have the skills to be able to make a television show quality restoration house swappers, but it's arcade. You know what I mean? Like something you would see on HGTV, but it's arcade. I don't have that ability. But the moment I'm interested in something like, I bought a Play Choice in 2021, there's this, oh, you're Retro Ralph. You're like Retro Ralph. I'm like, no, I just bought a home arcade. I just bought a full size arcade. It's just, there's not a thing where now all of a sudden I'm a full size arcade channel, or just because I bought a pinball channel, obviously now I'm a pinball channel. It's
Yeah,
like,
now you're going to be known as the Stern pinball guy.
yeah. And really, like,
well, it could be worse. You could be like what Rexer calls you, one up kits. You could be one up kits, and I mean,
could be one of kids, right? Yeah, I don't know. So all of that kind of happened, and so coming back, kind of trickling back up to why I think Michael B, myself, P Dubs purchased pinball machines around a similar time. And the answer is we all flew to Chicago together and played a ton of pinball together. And while we were there, we were like, man, it would be really cool to own these. And then we're all in a chat together where we were encouraging each other, and it had nothing to do with YouTube. It's weird because, like, I'm sure you're like this. You have a group of friends on Messenger that you've met online, but you have a relationship with, that you chat with periodically. Ask yourself, are those are those communications that you have constantly about YouTube? Is it? Are you talking about like, hey, I'm making this video, and what video are you making? Or are you talking about, dude, this crazy, my wife's sick right now, or whatever it is. My dog is sick. You're talking about life. You're just talking about normal stuff.
Yeah, nobody does that. About the YouTube thing. Nobody
Right.
does that. Like, what videos are you making? Nobody
Yeah,
cares.
you're just talking about, like, and sometimes you're talking
Yeah.
about stuff that you don't want to make content about, like, hey, my daughter just picked up this Wii game and I started playing it with her, and she discovered it on some YouTube. It's really cool. I never even knew about it. Have you ever heard about it? They're like, no, I never heard about it. I think I'm
Oh
going to buy
yeah,
it
you're
too.
talking about
No,
that
we're all going to make a
Castlevania game.
YouTube video about it.
Talking about that Castlevania Wii exclusive game. Yeah,
Right.
okay, I got you.
So my point is I think we like, for me, so there's this narrative of, like, obviously you want to do it for views, and it's like, well, go look at my channel, go see how often I've marketed any pinball content. I just don't care is the truth about it.
I think you guys underestimate your reach in the home arcade community, though, too, because what you just said about the pinball, about about not caring. I feel like you're when when they call certain people influencers. Okay,
Mm,
when I look at it, like, I consider anybody an influencer to be somebody who, if I'm watching them on, whether I know you or not, if I'm watching you on YouTube and I respect you and I follow your content and what you're saying to me has value with regards to a purchase that I'm going to make, I consider you to be an influencer, and I consider your opinion to be you know, a driving factor. Well, something to be considered when I make a purchase on a certain thing. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times. I mean, you guys talked about, I'll never forget, you guys, a lot of you YouTubers who I know now and I talk to now, were 100% responsible for me getting the MVSX. I was
oh,
a big Neo Geo fan growing up as a kid. I could never afford a real Neo Geo, and when the MVSX came out, and you guys everybody was covering it, and you all talked about it, and all had your opinions on it, and I just remember, hey, I'm watching, I'm watching Justin and Ralph, I'm watching
mhm,
Michael
mhm,
B, I'm watching all,
mhm.
and I'm seeing all these things, and it's just like, I feel like you can't, especially you can't discount your value to the community as an influencer. So when you start showing off pinball and you start, you know, hyping it up, and you see all of these arcade YouTubers coming together talking about pinball, and having you right now just break it down as almost like an emotional bonding experience to what's driven you towards it. It's fascinating to me because I'm
Mm.
somebody who never had any interest in pinball. Pinball always bored me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it was and then it
I'm with
was
you,
like
man.
and then it
I'm
was
with
like
you.
and then it was like watching you and Michael B and a few others, and then I'm like, I'm gonna get a couple of these tables for on at games because I have a Legends
Right,
Gamer Pro, and I
right.
connected to my TV, and I got a couple of tables and started playing around with the tables, and I know that how much I value you guys as influencers, because I can say 100% as fact that if I didn't know you guys and I didn't know of you guys and I didn't watch your content, that I would have never bought those
Yeah.
tables. And I know that that's just digital. I didn't go out and buy like a real pinball table or anything like that. But the point I'm trying to make is it's all because you know we're influenced by people that we like, people we respect, people that we follow, people that and you build that connection with your audience. I know you'd experienced a little bit of burnout with that whole thing recently, the whole YouTube thing and constantly streaming and all that. But
Yeah.
it, it's like seriously, it's you build a relationship with your audience, whether you know it or not, whether you
Yeah.
understand it or not, or care about it. But at some point, you really you'll never know. And I'm telling you this as as a fan of you, as someone who definitely has enjoyed your stuff over the years and
Mhm.
has followed you since the One Up Weekly days and all that. And
Yeah.
to me, it's really fascinating to see when we talk about transitions and that type of stuff, and to see you guys do that all in one. And I know there were some people in the community who are like, oh yeah, well, this means that home arcades are essentially dead because you're seeing all these big home arcade YouTubers talking
Mm.
about pinball now, and it's all coordinated. But hearing you describe it and hearing you talk about the emotional resonance resonance really makes a difference. And
Yeah,
it's a great
the whole
point.
thing, I think what happened was, at least for me, there's a crossroads for sure. But I don't necessarily agree with the assumptions that are made of like for me it's very odd timing that everything kind of landed at the time that it did. So there's for sure a lot that the average audience that's watching my content doesn't know. There's a lot of things that I was going through in the last few months. Then there's so work is crazy. It's not busy. It's just crazy. So we went through a ton of layoffs, and there was a certain point where everyone was on the chopping block. A company that I enjoy working for, and I absolutely adore the people that I work with, within like that could go away at any minute. You could get the message you were impacted. And it was seemingly random at first. Like it appeared on the surface to be if your number's up, your number's up. And as much as people would tell you, you'll be okay, you'll find another job. I didn't want another job. You know, I've worked in this industry for my entire life. So I work for Disney, I'll tell you. And so they just had a ton of layoffs. I made it past the layoffs, but in my head for the last 20 years, this is what I was going for, to work for the content king in the cable industry since I was 20. ESPN, ABC, Disney, they're the content kings. I remember in the early 2000s, you know, working for a cable company, and people would ask, why aren't things a la carte? Why is it that the base package is $30 and it's the content creators, the content owners control the price? Well, who's the dominant carrier of the content? And it was always Disney. And so, you know, in that career, it was kind of always like the goal to make it here. And so it took 20 years to 2020 to make it there. And then I got to be a part of building the biggest next to Netflix streaming company in the world, and to work that company to go from a US only product to global, which is something that I always wanted to do. The scale is enormous. This, if you put yourself in my shoes, from the point of view of being a kid at 18 years old in Des Moines, Iowa, and installing cable in one or two people's homes a day, impacting people's lives at a very small scale, and hoping one day that you could touch as many people as possible, which sounds weird when I say it out loud. I got that. And then the fear of, yeah, that can go away. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just business. It's just, at the end of the day, every company is capable of being in a situation where the numbers are just not shaking out right. So it's possible that your job could be on the chopping block. It doesn't matter if you work for a super big company that's trying to, you know, build a global brand, or if you're working for a mom pop shop. The emotions are just the same. So I was dealing with that this year, and it's not, the emotions, I would say, are not coming from the company. It's me never having to face that type of situation in my career. Keep in mind, cable companies for decades have been some of the healthiest companies ever. Software engineering in my generation since 2000. I joined the software engineering world post the .com era. Past that, there has been no bubble that's burst through my career until COVID. The moment COVID hit, theaters, streaming, software engineering, those three industries were hit. It doesn't matter if you work for Google or Facebook, that industry in software engineering alone was hit. You work for content kings like movie industries, streaming, you're hit. So imagine, something that you love that you're doing day by day. It's not just that you may lose your job, the entire industry is at risk. You don't know what the future is going to be. You're like, okay, I lose my job. Now I go work for Peacock. Now I go work for HBO Max. Now I go work for Pluto TV. They're all at risk. For some reason, this pandemic boom created this rush of streaming. It advanced the streaming world. There was just so many people that wanted to watch streaming content at home that it just grew. And then once the pandemic was seemingly over, it was like theaters suffered, streaming suffered, the economy, global economy, the shortages, it just all started to impact. And I'm sitting here just watching my world crumble. And then seeing the people that I work with, that I love working with, if I'm not impacted, they're impacted. People that I worked with closely got impacted. When it finally hit home, I was like, I can't stream anymore. I can't go live Sunday and be like, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about, I can't do it. It's been the most stressful time in my entire life. And at the same time, home arcade is seemingly crumbling. My interest, as my wife puts it, she thinks I should sell all my home arcades. That's what she thinks. It's not that she's unsupportive. She's like, you play multiple pinball games daily. I will wake up in the morning and play a pinball machine. I will take a break at lunch and play a pinball game. And I will play pinball at night. I will take my daughter to dance, drop her off, go to an arcade, play pinball machines. I will call my friends, be like, these are the nights that I'm hanging out at a pinball place because I have to drop my daughter off at dance. We should come hang out and play pinball. I was not a pinball guy. Like you said, you're not a pinball guy. Somehow I got addicted and I love it. But I still play home arcade. I still play the full-size arcades. I still play consoles. I still play guitar. I still play piano. It's just, for some reason, pinball is like, it tapped into this, I need to relieve some stress. I can play pinball for 10 minutes and it checks all those boxes of like, whew, I'm good. I'll play console games for hours and not have that feeling. I'll play full-size arcade games for hours and not hit that feeling. I can hit it in 5 minutes in pinball. I don't care if you think I'm a crappy player. I don't care if you think that I'm a crappy YouTuber that's trying to pivot into whatever. All I know is I found something that gives me pleasure very quickly, and it's not hurting anybody. Maybe it's an addiction, maybe there's a dopamine hit. I don't know what it is, but it's not going away.
Maybe it's because of the way you tapped into it and the way it kind of captivated you, captivated your emotions. Because I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I'm thinking, is it? And now I'm kind of connecting to, to the whole Retro Ralph thing we were talking about. Did it become to the point now where the home arcades were your gateway drug into pinball? Because that's what it sounds like at this point.
It's weird though.
It
Maybe
is weird. It is weird. Yeah.
You could look at that if you use the drug analogy. Because part of it, I don't know what it is. My highest score on Godzilla is about 380 million. I haven't got to 200 million in a month, but I can get to 100 million daily. 50 million, no problem. 100 million, no problem. I've analyzed it. Godzilla is probably going to take me 10 years to get to 1 billion. And I'm fine with that. The addiction isn't to the point where I'm dissatisfied with myself if I don't get my high score. The other day, I got 4th place on my high score, and it was exhilarating. I did it in ball 1. It was great. I hit every multi-ball. It was just a really good game. And I was like, I'm good. I played 1 game that day. Rarely do I ever play 1 game of Godzilla. Just 1. But I hit 100,000 on my first game. I was like, I'm good. And now I've rearranged my room in such a way where I have now 5 machines. And I literally turn them all on and I play one for 5 credits, then another one for 5 credits, another one for 5 credits, another one for 5 credits. And it's fascinating to me how the different games that I have are completely different. And when I play a certain game, the game will go quick or the game will go long. This one, Godzilla is the one that I can play the longest on a single play. Star Wars is probably the one that's the most enjoyable, but it's got some limitations. Revenge from Mars. Oh my God, I love that game so much. It's so easy to get into the boss battles, essentially the little levels that just everything about that. And that was $3,500. Maybe it's expensive, but from a pinball point of view, you can get that machine for pretty cheap. And it's basically the feeling of a $15,000 machine for only $3,500. It's just an incredible pinball machine. And Revenge from Mars, Pinball 2000. You start in America. I just always play it through or France. What you go from country to country, and off the top of my head, for some reason I'm forgetting it, but just the sarcasm that's used. You freaking hear Bill Clinton speak. Hey, Hillary, we gotta do something. It's just funny. And then, you do these bonus rounds and the game's not that hard to play. But sometimes you have a bad game and you just drain every ball. And that's okay. I guess the point I'm making is I'm at a point where I'm slowly getting better at all these games. Just slowly. But I'm fine with that. I love it. I love that I'll get to 300 million on Godzilla, and then the next game is only 1 million. And then the next game is 10 million. And then the next game is 50 million. And then 1 million. And then 5 million. And then 50 million. And then finally 100 million. And every single time I play, I'm noticing more things. It's like watching a movie again, and you're watching it again, and you're noticing so much more out of the movie. And imagine you watch the movie again and it feels like a whole new movie again. And you're like, I love this movie. And I don't know what to tell you. So there is a difference between home arcade, full-size arcade, and pinball to me. And that's why I have so many full-size pinball machines in a very short period of time. But it wasn't this is what I can tell you. It's not like I went and splurged and bought 5 machines. It's like I played pinball 1,000 times on a game and then bought it. And then I played 1,000 times and then bought it. And then 1,000 times and then I bought it. The only machine that I bought that I didn't play 1,000 times was the Foo Fighters Premium. By the time I did get it, I'd played the Pro. Not hundreds, but dozens of times. I not hundreds, because that game, for whatever reason, the only place that has it in Des Moines charges way too much for it. It's 75 cents a play, so, but I played it a lot.
Wow. That's fascinating, to hear it. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out if you experienced an evolution or just a change of, like they say we change as human beings every 7 years. So if that's true, maybe that's what it is. That was part of your metamorphosis into who you are now. You've
maybe
some of your experiences has gotten you to the point where the physical interactions with those pinball machines are your fortress of solitude, so to speak.
Yes, it's definitely a personal experience. I don't share this. I've only had a couple. Okay, so my best friend that lives locally has come over and played in my basement once. And so for 6 months or a year, it's my daughter played Godzilla today for the first time at my house. I've owned it for months. It's a very personal thing. It's not that it's off limits. It's just the family doesn't really go into this area. My daughter's playing Switch, but she got 50 million in 3 plays on Godzilla. And she texted me and I was like, I was on the phone with Michael B. And I'm like, my daughter just texted me that a screenshot of her Stern Insider at 3 plays today. She got 50 million. She never plays now I've taken her to play Godzilla.
Is this your daughter who did the thing on what arcade was it? Was it Road Blasters?
Yeah.
Okay. See,
so Road Blasters used to be in the garage,
yeah.
And so Ralph gave her he said he'd buy her a Road Blasters t-shirt if she got to level 50. She took that challenge and got it in a day. So she's determined like that. But I've taken her to pinball places before, and she's played Godzilla. She's played a ton, Attack from Mars, you name it. She played I took her to this one place, and she played the James Bond. Yeah, so she's played a handful of pinball machines. But since I've owned them in the basement and had them in the basement, she hasn't. She played Attack from Mars or Revenge from Mars and Star Wars when it was in the garage. And so she'd play that a couple times. A couple friends would come over. She'd go and take them in the garage. But now they're like super convenient in the basement. And really only in the last week have they been very inviting. Like I did a live stream where I showed my basement. I've rearranged it since then. You walk in and it's 5 pinball machines, like right when you walk in. Super inviting. And the reason why I think my daughter played it now, I have everything connected where I can turn on my machines from my phone. You go to home. Like here's an example. So here's a switch. Watch this. I just turned my entire basement lights on with my phone, right? And then so there's a pinball switch. If I turn this on, a ton of machines just turned on. They're all wired to just like these remote switches now. And so I'll give you an example. Behind me are 1-ups. So let me do this. So I just turned them all off. And I can turn them back on. And I've seen videos of people like, setting up automation like this before, but I never saw anyone like check it out. Like I can tell Siri, like turn on my machines, turn off my machines.
You can tell the AI to control your machines.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's not expensive, by the way. Like you can get a switch that connects to your phone for $10 on Amazon. You can get a power switch for like $20 or $30 that has like 5 ports on it. And you can individually, it's not expensive to set up and then if you guys don't know, I'm sure maybe there's videos out there that you've watched it. So this is how simple it is to set up, at least if you have Apple devices. I'm sure it's like this with Galaxy and Android, but you buy these like switches and they have a QR code on it. you scan the QR code when you open the app, and it's like, yeah, now I'm synced to that thing, and now you can control it. Like, it's that simple. So then I bought the thing on Amazon that the lights that are in this basement, it's a wall switch. So I bought a replacement smart wall switch. It's like $10. And I unscrewed it, plugged the wires into that, plugged it back in, scanned the QR code, and now you can physically walk up and press the switch to turn on and off the basement lights, or you can turn on and off the basement lights from the phone. And this is all about the pinball experience. It's one of the reasons why I did it, is because I want to play pinball in the dark. Like, it's a real arcade, right? And so I'll walk into the basement. I want to have the lights on so I can see to get in front of the machines. And then once I'm in front of the machines, I want pitch black. And so I grab my phone, turn off the lights. And now it's like, I can't see my basement at all. It's all unfinished, but I can't see it. All I can see is a pinball machine. I might as well be at $1 million arcade downtown. Like, you can't tell the difference.
So you've captured the spirit of it. So there you go. Now, Emery Arcade wants to know, what 5 tables do you have, Justin?
So I have the 2 Pinball 2000 machines, which is got a CRT in it. It's all original hardware. It's a CRT that uses a holographic effect. So the gameplay that you're interacting with is like a hologram on the table itself. Those titles are Star Wars Episode 1 and Revenge from Mars. Revenge from Mars is a sequel to the popular Attack from Mars. So those are the first 2 machines that I got. Then I bought Jurassic Park. Is that right? Jurassic Park. I got that from Captain's Auction. Jurassic Park Pro by Stern. It's within the top 5, top 6 best pinball games of all time. I love Jurassic Park as a IP. When I started playing Jurassic Park at the arcade, I talked to B about this. He doesn't really get into the Jurassic Park, but there's something about the experience for sure. Jurassic Park pinball machine played a huge role into me becoming really enjoying pinball games. And it was something about, as odd as it is, when you drain the ball, when you lose a game on Jurassic Park, just the animations with this effect of boom, 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 boom. It shows you all the bonuses with this big boom effect. And the arcade that I played at, it was really loud. Like, I don't know if they had upgraded speakers or whatever, but I could feel the boom. And it didn't even have a shaker motor. Like, it just is loud. Like, it had upgraded speakers or something. And it just, I don't know, got me into it. It took me back to when I was 14, when I very first saw, or 12, or however old I was, first saw Jurassic Park, with the Mr. DNA and, all of that. And it really got me into it. So I would go play that a ton at the local mall a couple of years ago. And I'd drop off my daughter for dance. I'd go play. That was the close by, and I would play Jurassic Park. And I imagined in my head, man, this is a game I would love to own at home. And then, so later that happened. And sure enough, there was a day that I set it up, Jurassic Park, very first time, and I lost the first ball, and it went boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, I finally did it. I have that feeling right here at home. I own that machine. So I love that game. I still play it. I'm still learning it. I've barely scratched the surface on being able to beat the game, but I continue to progress. I see it like a game like Mega Man. When I was a kid, it took me a while to beat it, but I kept on progressing and eventually beat it. But it was always just like outside of my ability to beat it. And so I had to keep on progressing. And if I ever get stuck in a game and I'm stuck there forever, I'll lose interest. But with pinball, I'm always progressing, but it's like to beat the game is 10 years from now. And it's like, that's fine. Like, I get to, how great is that? I get to play this game for 10 years and like eventually beat it. Anyway, then I own Godzilla, which is a classic, even though it's only been out for a couple of years. And then Foo Fighters that I just received. And what I love about those games, they're all got different varieties. So Jurassic Park is a different game from Godzilla. There's claims that Godzilla and Foo Fighters are similar, but I see them as very different games.
Now, are there digital versions of these available? Godzilla and Foo Fighters and
So I don't think there's a digital version of Foo Fighters, although B had told me that it was designed digitally.
oh, okay.
So he had watched an interview from the
I'm just
developer.
sitting here thinking, my God, is that game's going to get some of these tables?
So probably not, because Stern, like, they own the license on it, and I guess they're not. Gary Stern is not interested in virtual pinball, is my understanding. But although he's not CEO anymore, so there's a new CEO. I think Gary is on the board of directors, so he probably still has some influence. But maybe the new CEO will be like, yeah, we're going to build these machines. And maybe he will be like, let's virtualize them as well, because pinball everywhere, you know, he could have the attitude of like, you know, more the merrier, you know, like the more reach our games have, the more operators buy more machines and the more machines come in homes. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And there's been a recurring question in the chat, so I kind of got to go back to this. People want to know when you think Time Crisis is coming from Arcade 1-Up. Several people have asked it in the chat, so.
I mean, I don't know a date. You know, to be fair to the creator, I probably shouldn't say many details, but there's a creator that someone will know, people will know soon, and maybe they've announced it. I don't watch every single video, but a content creator has been picked to review the new Time Crisis. And I guess that means soon, right? Because they don't plan that stuff years in advance. It's like, you know, when you would hear, like, I don't know, Jade is gonna get the which machine, the race,
Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious, yeah. You know, we knew Fast and the Furious was coming, and then probably by the time Jade got contacted, it was soon to be announced, right? I think we're in that phase where that Time Crisis is soon. But who knows? Who knows? Like, with some of their machines, I've heard people have reached out to me and have speculated that some of these machines were on hold. Like, they fully, like, I can't remember the exact example where it's like there's some discrepancies in the timeline where you got a deluxe version and then you got a version that comes out later that's not a deluxe, and then that's like looks confusing. Like, why wasn't this new thing a deluxe? And then they're like, well, clearly this was designed before the deluxe was designed and then held, and then the deluxes came out, and then the non-deluxe was released because they were trying to time things. So my point is, who knows, right? Like, it's possible that Time Crisis is ready, but I don't know. There's a new Time Crisis movie coming out, but no one knows about it yet because it's under embargo. And then, so they have to wait for August, and then that's when the Time Crisis movie is announced, and they at the same time are going to announce the machine. I don't know. Do you know? My point is
Time Crisis movie.
I'm just making stuff up.
I
but
mean,
the point is,
that would be insane. I was just picturing it in my head right now. Like, who would they get? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. My point is like, Arcade 1-Up likes to release things correlated to like marketing.
Yeah.
So even if you have it ready, I don't know. Let's say that they're going to release another sports. Let's say they do like an NHL machine. And they're like, it's done. We got it fully ready. It's online and everything. We're contacting influencers to like get it set up. But then it's not the season for NHL. Well, then you're going to hold it back until like the season starts and that first game is, and there's hype around it, and then
Oh,
you
well, it's like,
announce it.
well, I mean, this is one up we're talking about here, right? Introducing the Shack Jam XL during the Super Bowl that made about zero or less cents.
Maybe you're
Less
right.
than zero.
But maybe they did that because they were like, well, we can't wait. I don't know. When's the NBA season? Isn't it later? I'm not into sports, so.
But I mean, I'm not either, but this is my point. They're flooding the market right now with NBA Jam. And so it's fascinating to me. It's just a weird, I don't know. I hope they sell as many Time Crisis cabinets as they have NBA Jams out there, because I think we've seen enough NBA Jam. NBA Jam right now is borderlining on Pac-Man as far as insanity goes from Arcade 1-Up. I can't. I'm trying to figure out who it's for, because as 19K Fox pointed out recently on his most recent stream, pretty much everybody who wanted NBA Jam likely has one at this point. So it makes no sense to put out.
Okay. Let me go back up the stack all the way. Told this story about I got the Foo Fighters, all of that. Foo Fighters was redelivered to me today. The new version, I have it right here. I haven't unboxed it yet. The FedEx guy delivers it into my garage. So I have a 1-car garage. So I have a 2-car garage that my wife uses, and I have this 1-car garage that's like I can put arcades in it, whatever. It's mostly I could probably park a car in it at this point. But it has a few arcades in it, and he rolls the Foo Fighters on a dolly, on a forklift into my garage. And a lot of times I get these deliveries and they just sign here. But this guy was like 30s, 40s. Very much our generation. I think he was a little younger than you and I. But he was still like, wanted to chat. Like we talked for like 5 minutes. And so he rolled it in. He goes, "You got an arcade, huh?" I was like, "Oh, this is a pinball machine." He goes, "Oh, it's a pinball machine?" It's funny. It said Stern Pinball right on it, but he was like, thought it was an arcade.
Not very bright.
Well, yes, but to be fair, like the Stern Pinball box kind of like looks like the shape of an arcade. Like it's tall, because the way they.
But the point you just made, it says Stern Pinball right.
He didn't read right. I was like, so this is a pinball machine. And he rolls in, and I got a pinball in the garage. I have a like a Play Choice. Basically, it's not the Play Choice that I have downstairs. It's like a second one that I bought. That's just empty. It's an empty cab. It's a project that I plan on working on. It's like a restoration project. So that's in there, and then a Pac-Man Cabaret is in there, and I have an Act Games Legends in there, in the garage. And so he goes, "Oh man, you like arcades? You buy and sell arcades? You own an arcade? What's the deal?" And it's only a couple times that I get questions like that. I was like, "Oh, I'm more of a collector. I really love pinball machines. I own many of them, and like that one's a restoration, and I got like a Pac-Man Partycade. I own like 3 Pac-Man Partycades. One of them's just in the garage, like storage, but I have like one in here." And so he says, "Oh man, I really want to buy an arcade." That's what he says. I'm like, "Oh, really? Like, I could help you. Like, what are you into? Like, are you talking about like a home arcade, like the ones you can get at Walmart? You're talking like a multicade where you can play a ton of games on it? Or what about just set up a system that you could play on your TV? Or what are you talking about?" So he says to me, "Look, I got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I just really want to introduce them to arcade games." I was like, okay, what's the budget you're talking about? Like, you're talking about like a couple $100, $500, $1,000? What are you talking about? Do you have the space? Do you have no space? I'm asking him all these questions. He goes, well, I've seen some deals online for like a little Nintendo for like $300. It's a little pricey. I was like, okay, I got you narrowed down, in my head. I'm like, okay, I know your situation. I was like, what games do you want to play? What games do you want to play to show your kids? Just Nintendo games. I'm like, console Nintendo games? He's like, yeah. I was like, on your TV? He goes, yeah. I just want to show them like Mario. I was like, you should look for the Nintendo Classic or a Raspberry Pi. And he goes, what's a Raspberry Pi? And it's so fascinating to me and intriguing to me that here's a person that has clearly thought about introducing games to their children at an inexpensive price, but has no clue what a Pi is, right? He has the desire to deliver to his kids these games. You and I know the answer. He doesn't. And he says to me, now I've seen those one at Walmart, the little arcades, but I they're like $500-$600. So I don't think I can buy those. I was like, there's deals. What are you talking about? Well, sometimes you can get them for like $75. I was like, this partycade right here, you can get for like $170, $150 sometimes. You just hang it on the wall. There's no clue. I was like, these are at QVC. Go look at QVC. Keep an eye on them. Sometimes they drop down for like $150. That's like 10 games on it. You want to introduce your kid to Pac-Man? $150 for Pac-Man. Hang it on the wall. It'll feel like an arcade. You have a small place, hang it on the wall. They have to walk up to it to play it. It's an option. And I was like, or go look into Raspberry Pi. You can get a Raspberry Pi for like $100 and then spend a weekend trying to program it. And he had no clue. The idea of sideloading ROMs, no clue. He has the desire to show his kid the games, doesn't know how to do it. And so I'm just like, you and I talk about this home arcade space. Someone else already has NBA Jam. That FedEx guy doesn't have NBA Jam. He asked me, what games are on the Walmart versions? He doesn't know the name. I'm like, well, they just came out with an NBA Jam. It's tall. It's like 5 foot tall. Because I have a couple arcade 1-ups in my garage that are 3/4 with no riser, just sitting there, storage. I'm like, these are little baby ones, right? They have ones that are normal height. I was like, they're $500, $600 right now. You keep an eye on them. They may go down to $300. And he's like, they have NBA Jam. It's like, yeah, they have NBA Jam. No clue. Doesn't know the space at all. Potential customer has the desire. Potential customer doesn't have the knowledge.
Well, if he wants
market's
NBA
still
Jam,
there.
he has plenty of options.
But he doesn't know the options. No one's told him, go search Raspberry Pi on YouTube. I was the first person to tell him that. So.
Well, it's that's why this space, I tell people all the time, the space that we're in is a very small space compared to other fandoms and other hobbies and things like that. This is why we all know each other, because it's such a small space. But
yeah, I Console Fanboy says market is not there. He's just one idiot, dude. Come on. I hear what you're saying, but I talk to enough people. I mean, this is my passion. Come on, Console Fanboy, you do too. When I'm out and about, there was times I'd be at Walmart standing outside of an arcade 1-up. Someone would walk up to it and go, do you know anything about these machines? I was like, yeah, I own 10 of them, a dozen of them. What do you want to know? And I'd sit there and chat with them, and it was always the same answer. And they would always say the same thing. And they basically want a Raspberry Pi. And then I tell them the answer of how to do it. They don't know what I'm talking about. No, they're not ready to learn what I'm explaining.
And Raspberry Pi would completely blow them away, because they would have to, then not only do they not know anything about it, but then, like you said, they'd have to sit there trying to figure out how to program it. And that would blow their mind too, because, trying to figure out how to create an image and getting the ROMs and all that stuff. I mean, you're talking about like next level stuff for a lot of these people where it would just be like,
or you just tell
that
them,
would be the
you
guy.
got
That would be the
Switch?
guy. A Switch.
You
Or
got a Switch? Oh, you
could-
do. Do you know about the Nintendo? Oh, I don't have the online. Do you know what has all the Nintendo games on it? Why don't you do this? Pay for the subscription for 1 year, just 1 year. That's it. And then show your kids all the Nintendo games, all the
Stop
Super
going to
Nintendo games,
Walmart.
and that's it.
Stop.
It's funny. He's like, why are you talking to random strangers? Why are you not talking to random strangers? Are you afraid of people that want to interact with you in public places?
Well, that's how the hobby grows, right?
There you go.
So what do you think is going to happen to this guy? You think this guy's going to buy an NBA Jam Deluxe? I mean,
no, I think he's going to. It's possible that he may Google the things that I said.
Raspberry Pi.
I emphasize Raspberry Pi. It seemed like that was within his budget and within his, he may Google it and find an Etsy store that sells one ready to go. And or maybe he just goes with the online Switch.
There you go. The plug and play ready to go Etsy store version where you got 90,000 games, an image already packed to the gills, your plug and play ready to go. It even comes with a cheap Super NES style controller. So he'd be in his groove if he got that. Actually, you should have just sent him a link.
Here you go, bud.
What to buy?
I might do that. I might just have cards. I'm gonna buy business cards that are like, so you want to, I could just hand them out to people, just grow the industry. But it's interesting because, like, with my daughter, I didn't even realize it, but over the years, I got her. My wife and I had this conversation when she was very young, and we really did it. It was fun. There was a certain point where when she was first born, we were like, no screen time. It was right when the iPad had come out, and we saw that iPad was just like this, and maybe if we had a kid now, it'd be a little bit different. But at the time we were like, okay, no screen time, read books to our children. It's all about books. It's all about analog. She had like a play kitchen. She could play kitchen like at a year old. It was all, so we're trying to tactile things, get her, at a year old, like get her to use her fingers, like to pick up things. And I remember even at like 16 months old or a year old, we taught her how to drink water out of a shot glass, which sounds weird. And it was funny because she would try to pick up the shot glass in her fingers because she's like a baby, she's a baby trying to drink so she looks like a drunk person. But after a couple of days, she drink this water smooth. We're trying to teach her this independence that she could do things herself, and made life easier for us as parents. And next thing you know, no sippy cup. She's just learning how to drink like you and I drink. Like let's skip past that sippy cup and like just teach her how to hold the cup steady without spilling. And when she was very, young, and we gave her the shot glass, because, if it falls over and spills, you're only spilling an ounce, no big deal. Within a couple of days, she had it down. We loved that early on parenting that we were trying to give her. And there's a certain point where we were like, let's introduce her to video games. Maybe she's like 3 years old. And I had this idea. I was like, we should introduce her to retro games first. Let her appreciate like the Game Boy, and then the Nintendo, and then the Super Nintendo. When she grows up, she'll be like us. We don't start her with a Wii U, which was out at the time. Don't start her with a Wii. Show her the same things that we saw growing up, so that when she's like a teenager, she can relate to her parents.
And not only that, she'll have nostalgia.
Yeah.
And that nostalgia will carry through to wanting to see these games preserved and see the hobby continue to grow from generation to generation. That's one thing that has me really, really worried when we talk about classic consoles like the NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. These kinds of things, I worry about this because of, there was a study done, I think, by one of the video game historian type websites, where they had said there was an astounding number, almost in like the 80 percentile of all these games from that era that have been lost to time.
Oh,
because they've either been delisted, or the rights fell through, or the games that are next to impossible to get because they've just been lost, and more games are in danger of that as time goes on.
right.
Because nowadays people don't care anymore. And when it comes to console games, everything is going the route, whether people want to admit it or not, everything is going the route of digital. Right. So you're essentially, you have no ownership. And so once these, once these servers go down,
that's right.
That's it. And I love people who say, well, that's why I always buy my Xbox and PlayStation games on a disc. Yeah, but here's the problem. You buy the game on a disc, you put the game in the system, and what's the first thing that the game has to do after you've purchased it?
Update.
Yes, an update just to be able to play it. So what happens when the servers go down? Your physical game, I got news for you, your modern physical game is just a coaster.
Yeah,
because it's not gonna play out of the box without that update. If there's no place to get that update from,
right,
there's no way you're going to be able to preserve that game or play that game. And that's why things like Internet Archive are doing the Lord's work. And we have, I'm just, it's like I get why, publishers and developers and companies want to go all digital. I understand that. But the reality is I feel like there's a certain level of responsibility that comes with that. Not just to the consumer, but to the games themselves.
Yeah, I really hope they fix that. With my daughter, there was some great investments early on in her life that took years to realize. Like me as a father, I didn't even know it was happening. So to give you an illustration, so we gave her a Game Boy. I think she's maybe like 4 or 5 years old. We gave her a Game Boy. Gave her all these games. It was my wife's Game Boy that I bought her in '99. So, and we still have it. It's like the Game Boy I bought her when we were dating, and we let our daughter have it. She took care of it. She loved all the games on it. And then we showed her some Nintendo games, and then like maybe 6 months later, Super Nintendo. And it was this funny little secret that my wife and I had. Like, she has no clue that the Wii U or the Wii games are so much more graphically intensive than the games that we're showing her. And she's completely content because she doesn't know anything else. She lives in this like video game bubble,
retro video game bubble.
And we're letting her play through these games. And then eventually we're like, I bought a Wii U, probably like 20, she must have been like 8 or 10 years old or something by the time I got a Wii U. She starts playing these games. She's just like, the graphics are getting so much better. And I'm like, and I tell her, this is actually an old unit. There's a new thing called a Switch that just came out that's even better than this Wii U. And she's like, what? That's when we were like, let her know what year it was, if you know what I mean. Like, we made you think you were living in the 90s. Surprise, it's 2020, whatever, 2018. So we get a Nintendo Switch, and she's like, oh my God, this is great, And then she kind of caught up with all the generations. There was a PS2 period of time where she spent an entire summer playing the PS2. It was 2015. She's playing Sonic on a PS2 in 2015, thinking it's the like most advanced video game system in the world. Okay, so all those were investments that we didn't even know were like I wasn't even thinking about it paying off. It was just something we were doing because of screen time. It was this like we don't want to get caught up in buying her the latest game. I've bought these games over the years. I'll just slowly introduce. They're in a closet, and I'll slowly over time introduce things, and that's how we'll save money. So if we don't have to keep on
That's
buying,
brilliant.
you know. Okay, so then this day happened, and it was all of that hard work paid off in a single moment. And I didn't even realize it. I say to my daughter, this is just a couple years ago, hey, Nintendo Direct is happening tomorrow. We should watch it together. She's like, okay. So I call her. I'm like, Nintendo Direct starting. I'm in my office. I pull up a chair. Let's watch it in my office on my computer monitor together. Nintendo Direct. Boom. They announce for the Switch, they're re-releasing Link's Awakening for the Game Boy. I look over at my daughter. She's crying. And I'm like, what? Why is she? She's faking it. Why would she cry about Link's Awakening? So I asked her, why are you crying about Link's Awakening? She goes, this is the first video game I ever played. It's the game I beat. And I was like, oh my God, it's the Game Boy game we let her play when she was like 5. And I don't know, she must have been like 10 when this happened. And it was like only 5 years had passed, 5-6 years from her playing the very first video game ever, which was Game Boy Link's Awakening, to fast forwarding all of the generations all the way to the Switch. And the Switch re-released it, and she had the emotional experience that you and I have when our favorite game gets the nostalgic. I don't know. It's really cool. One last part of it. I bought an analog Pocket, which is like a Game Boy clone, which is fascinating. It's just amazing. She hates it because it's not like the original Game Boy. It doesn't feel accurate. She would rather play the original Game Boy. And I was like, I love you. She doesn't want the clone.
Original hardware. She's original. She's about the original hardware.
I didn't influence that, I swear. All I did was let her play original hardware. And then later, what I influenced was, this is better than the original hardware. This has 10x the quality screen, can play all the same games perfectly, can play not only all the Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, Game Boy Advance, and Game Gear, can do it all. And it has ability for cores that you can side load. You can even load the games without the cartridges. That's me influencing her that this analog Pocket is better than anything she has. She turns it on, and when she puts the cartridge in, she goes, it doesn't feel right. I'd rather play the original Game Boy Color. And I'm like, okay. I can't argue with you. I tried to influence you into better technology.
That's
original hardware is better.
That's expert parenting right there, Justin. I mean, you built that video game legacy. Right. That is amazing. Wow. Original hardware. Yeah, there's something to be said about. I didn't even realize
I was getting her addicted to original hardware.
You know, with all the, I mean, especially, you know, so essentially, you know, the analog Pocket is just another clone console, Justin. That's all it is. It's a clone console. It's a very advanced, very expensive clone console, right, but it's a clone console nonetheless. I mean,
it's expensive now, but when I pre-ordered it was $200. I mean, comparatively to what it could be, like right now they go for $500 on eBay. And so, I mean, I think it's a but yeah, I get your point. But you can't fool my daughter when it comes. I mean, when you're introducing her to original hardware at such a young age, she grew that nostalgia. Like, again, some may be watching this and going, okay, there's a lot of father influence going on here. And okay, maybe that's true. But what I want to remind everyone is we just gave her the Game Boy. That's it.
Are you kidding? You could actually
Just handed it to her.
write a thesis on this.
Like, this is,
because
yeah.
This is the way that those of us that have this love and affection deeply for retro games, this is how you do it.
Yeah, keep in mind, I did not spoon feed her retro video games and convince her to love them. I only provided them as the only option. And so think of, and I understand it, when she was like, I don't know, 6 years old, we got an iPad and we let her use an iPad. They get absorbed with screen time. They get absorbed with whatever games. It doesn't matter. Did you get my point? It's like a kid won't know that how great is an iPad is unless you hand them an iPad to play. If you hand them an iPad to play and let them play those games, they will be obsessed with those iPad games. We did that with our daughter and she got obsessed with them. Of course, every kid loves the interactive play of something touch screen. But also, if you give them the option of an old school Game Boy with 10 games and say, take care of this and walk away, and that's their only option to play video games, they will play the heck out of that because they don't even know the alternative.
Did you introduce her to the Game Gear?
No, there was no Game Gear. She has zero. No game. I didn't buy a Game Gear. I don't have any Game Gear games. I wasn't on purpose. I mean, it was just
something you didn't have.
It may sound like I thought this through. We didn't think it really through.
But what it sounds like you did was you just went with what you had in the closet.
You just went with what we had in the closet. And my wife was like really worried that a child at a very young age being exposed to excessive screen time could hurt their development. That was the main root of it. So I was like, I'm fine. And I had a lot of screen time as a kid. Maybe a Game Boy is okay at 5 years old. And my wife was like, yeah, that sounds good. It's just a Game Boy. So it was kind of like this compromise. Don't give her an iPad. Let her have a Game Boy.
It's not on the internet or anything.
Not on the internet. Yep.
That's another great thing about the consoles we all grew up with, Justin. Yeah. The fact that none of them are online. It was like, yo, this is.
So we're 30 minutes away from being 3 hours. You got to cancel me. You got to ask me questions that'll get me canceled. You made me a promise that you were going to get me canceled. I got nothing to live for anymore. I'm YouTube abandoned, right? My channel is dead.
I don't think your channel.
So might as well be canceled.
I don't think your channel's dead. You're just in a transitional period right now.
You know what's funny? I don't think it's transitional. I've done this before. I'm taking a break. And let me explain this. So One Up Weekly, when that ended, I took a break. And I thought,
yeah, it was sad. It was sad to see that show go. You guys, like that show was premium. That was one of those shows where I got to say, for me, that was one of the shows when we, you know, how we just talked about, Ralph to doing like a real like TV show with arcade pickers and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I could have seen you guys doing One Up Weekly on Netflix or something. Because that had a really, really authentic quality to it.
I do know, for me, it was very special. And so when I hear other people say it was special to them, I appreciate that, because it was like I felt that special thing you're talking about. And for a while, when we were feeling that special thing, we wondered if we were alone in that special feeling. But I mean, even after it ended, we still hear a lot of people that, reminisce about those times. And so, yeah, it was pretty special. So when that ended, Yeah. So just like I was explaining, there wasn't a lot of thought that went into helping my daughter have this appreciation towards retro video games. It was just kind of, we exposed her to what we had, and it just kind of turned into this thing that later paid back dividends of this, like, she has this great appreciation for retro games. And that's really cool. The One Up Weekly ending and then me doing Console Kits podcast, that maybe you can call that a transition. For me, that was, I took a break, and I'm doing that now, and there's something similar going on. It's this, I don't fully know how to describe it, but I feel as though if you stop doing something for a while and you just stop and stop, naturally you'll want to do something again, and you gotta let that happen organically. I researched this a couple years ago, and I don't fully understand it, but there's a philosophy of, some people believe that you should do whatever drives you to do things. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
just allow natural drive to drive your decisions. Don't think about it, just let it happen. And so there's another way to look at it. It's like, whatever you find yourself naturally wanting to do is probably something that you really want to do, because you naturally want to do it. So when One Up Weekly ended, I asked myself, do I want to do a solo podcast? And I knew I had to stop doing everything with One Up Weekly, because that was the only option. The show was ended. I was no longer going to do a show with Ralph. So it's over. The question is, there's two options. Do a show on my own, or do nothing. End my YouTube career. I didn't want to partner with anybody else to do another show, because I was afraid that would fail. Maybe fail's the wrong word. I thought as though it would end the same way, where we would do it for a while and then it would end. And I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to invest so much time into a brand, a show, whatever it was, and then out of my control have it end. So I wanted to go solo. Because if I don't depend on anyone else, then if it ends because I want it to end, not because someone else wants it to end. And I said this to everybody I know. I went to P-Dubs and said, it's my opinion that your podcast should end. I went to TechBuzz. It's my opinion that your podcast should end. That may sound selfish, but I told them, like, there's going to be a day someone will quit, and then you'll have to rebrand. I go to Super Gamer Room Dudes. There's one day someone's going to quit, and you're going to have to rebrand. But one thing you could do is make the P-Dubs podcast, the 19K Fucks podcast, the Michael B podcast, the TechBuzz podcast, the Console Kits podcast, and we could all just be guests on each other's podcast occasionally. And it'll always be my podcast. It'll always be your podcast. And when I'm on your show, I'm your guest, not we're co-host. And that came specifically from a feeling of, the reason why I wanted to do a podcast was because there was a podcast in the retro scene called the Retro Roundtable. The Retro Roundtable was run by Retro RGB and HD Retrovision. Let's see. What's that guy's name? Voltar. So these are YouTubers in the RGB space, like people that are trying to modify their consoles to have the highest quality output.
Yeah.
Either component video, RGB, to a PVM monitor. There's like an entire space for this. In my head, it's the My Life in Gaming retro RGB space. I was a huge fan of the space. Still am. Like, that's like, I watch all their content. Retro RGB, My Life in Gaming, Voltar, HD Retrovision's kind of a company, but sometimes they do videos. They did a podcast. And the entire, for me, One Up Weekly is the retro roundtable in the home arcade space. That's what it is. I remember Tech Buzz being like, "Oh, well, you copied us," or P Dub's like, "Oh, you copied us." I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I made a podcast called One Up Weekly that's a ripoff of the Retro Roundtable. Retro Roundtable is who I ripped off. 100%. I said it to Ralph day one. There's this podcast I love called Retro Roundtable. It's from the RGB space. We should bring that concept to the home arcade. Everything about our show was a ripoff. And then I went to freaking Retro RGB, who's a friend of mine. We like, I want to make a podcast. I want to make it similar to your podcast. Can you give some advice? You know what his advice was? Don't have a podcast with 5 people because it'll ultimately end. Because it's really hard to coordinate 5 people to be a part of a podcast. It's why
I agree.
It's why the roundtable.
I've been there. Yeah, it's hard.
He's like, my recommendation is do it with 2 people. Okay, so I kept on telling Ralph, 2 people, it's just us. That's it. 2 people. That's it. We split it. That's it. Super chats come in. We split it. That's it. 2 people. Freaking Nostalgia reached out to us at one point, and Ralph's like, hey, Nostalgia wants to join. I'm like, nope, Nostalgia can't join. 2 people. 3 people. All of a sudden, One Up Weekly's 3 people.
Crowd.
Retro freaking Nostalgia can't make it one day. We have to cancel the show because can't do the show without all 3 people. Okay. The one day Ralph's like, can't do this anymore. I'm like, great. So I have to cancel because you're out. Yeah, I'm never doing a podcast with another person again because I have a desire to do a podcast every week and someone just bailed on me. I should have listened to Bob when he said, or you could do it by yourself. Now, I don't blame Ralph for quitting One Up Weekly. It is what it is, but it is the reason why when I decided to come back, I became solo. And why on my show there's almost no guest. I go on your show because you invited me. I go on XY's show occasionally because they invited me. I don't reach out to anybody and say, I want to be on your show. If you invite me, sure. I often don't return the favor, and maybe I'm selfish, but it's because I hate being burned. And I hate seeing shows crumble because one person decides to leave.
I've been there and I sympathize with you. I've gone through that before, and it is not a good thing because it demolishes everything.
Yeah.
Especially when it's just 2 people.
Right.
If it's just 2 people, it's even worse. It stings even harder because now you're like, you know, I had gone through a period of that like that where I was doing my internet radio show, and I always had a co-host. And I had gotten to the point too where I had gone through a situation where my co-host had to drop out. And I went through exactly kind of a very similar thing what you went through with Ralph. I went through a period where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do my own thing. Just me, nobody else. But I enjoy playing off of, I enjoy the dynamic of playing off of each other. I'm sure you enjoyed that too. The dynamic that you and Ralph had going back and forth with each other, and you know, being able to bounce off ideas and comments and jokes and various things. So it's hard when and I also did the other thing you were talking about, where I was part of a stream with that I did a regular show that I did with like 5. It was like 5
a panel
people.
Show, right?
A panel show with like 5 people, and but whenever somebody leaves, it changes the show, and it kind of, I don't want to say it completely ruins the show, but it makes it harder for the show to continue because there's a lot of dynamics there, and then you have to then if you find somebody to replace, you know, the person who's left.
Firm believer in the ZodWriter show, the Console Kids podcast. I'll invite people occasionally, and maybe we can do a panel show, but the panel show is not sticky. There's no obligation to be like, wow, we're doing this show 3 weeks in a row. We should split revenues. And then it turns into this weird thing. And it's like, the thing that will never fail is I fully own this show, and I invite people on, and then you invite me on, and then you're a guest, and
It's networking.
that's
And,
it.
and a lot of and it's beautiful. It's a very
And I can
good
quit if I want, and no one cares. And I can take a break, like I have been.
It affords you the ability
And
to
I
take
do it.
breaks like what
I
you're
did
doing.
it last year too. I took a break for like 3 months,
And you
and
don't
no
have to
one's
worry
pissed
about
off
anything.
at me because I took a break.
Right.
Like, oh, I'll just come back when I want to.
I think a lot of people, at least in this space, were heartbroken when One Up Weekly ended, because there were so many memories and so many things that came from it. So many people's love for the home arcade community, stemmed from that show. And I mean, speaking for myself, I mean, that was one of the things. It was must watch YouTube, for real. I mean, and I really mean that. And I am to this day thinking about it. It's sad that you and Ralph are not still doing it in some capacity, because it definitely, even now, with Ralph's completely different, outlook that he has, and completely different view in the way that he is doing things now, it's still, I always wondered what that dynamic would look like if One Up Weekly was around in 2023. Like, what would that dynamic be? You have Ralph, who's into restoring arcades and preserving art machines, and but he's into like real arcades. And then where you're being affectionately called One Up Kits because of your love for the 3/4 scale line. And I always wondered what that would be like in the modern era. It's like, that's how long it's been. It's like, wow, what would that be? But yeah, I
honestly, as you describe it, if I were, my gut reaction is One Up Kits wouldn't exist. Being solo made me vulnerable to attack, and that wouldn't exist at all if Ralph was on a show with me weekly, because that's what the dynamic created. It created this. Rexer doesn't make fun of Ralph. He wouldn't touch him. He definitely wouldn't touch me if we're doing a show weekly, but I'm by myself, and he knows I don't react. He knows I won't respond to anything he says. So he continues. Because I allow him. He says what I allow him to know about me, and it meets his agenda. And he knows that I won't speak back because I don't care. So he created a perfect scenario where you could grow an audience and treat that audience poorly by lying, deceiving, and entertaining them in a way that fits his agenda. And I'll never say anything about it. And he can convince enough people that they believe it's true, and then convince a larger amount of people that it's just entertainment. So the larger amount of people that just enjoy it because it's this weird Howard Stern entertainment gives the facade that that's credible. And then there's a small amount of people that follow very closely, that look at that facade of numbers of people that are following, and they use that as a way to prove that it's true and accurate. And someone like me who never responds to any of those accusations, they misunderstand the silence as it's accurate. The claims are accurate. And so it's perfect. It's perfect. And that's why it's 100% true that Rexer is the #1 home arcade YouTuber, because he created a perfect environment for him to always be the truth.
So
And
would you say that Rexer is the Howard Stern of the home arcade community?
I don't know if he's Howard Stern, but he will continue to grow and dominate because he created an atmosphere where he can do anything. He can pivot from calling me one-up kits. I'll just focus on myself for a second and not bring any other person's name into it, and get a crowd of people to agree and watch in astonishment of the things that he says. He can also criticize the company accurately and get a number of people entertained in that fashion. He can, in every episode, promote himself as being accurate from episode to episode without looking. A lot of content creators they have too much humility to do that. They have too much humility to say, in my last episode, I did A. In the previous episode, I did B. In the episode beside, you know what I'm saying? It's meta talk. Do you understand, content creators? You make content, and what is your content about? Let's say you're a YouTuber and you talk about whatever, laptops. Your job as a YouTuber is to talk about a laptop. Samsung just released a laptop. Dell just released a laptop, and Apple just released a laptop. And you make videos on it. And you can make a ton of content, and your goal is to educate people about the new products. You're passionate about laptops. You're passionate about these brands, and you're passionate about telling people about them, giving them the options. And so that content creator that I'm describing is an educational content creator who makes episodes that are about that specific model that they're reviewing. Typically, there's a small amount of marketing that's in those episodes where they're talking about their other videos. But humility prevents them from overindulging in this attitude of like, I am the best laptop creator out there. Because that's kind of human nature, is like, you have this platform, you have this audience, and you've grown, and you respect and understand there's other content creators, and you understand and respect that audience may have different opinions about other creators. And so you just kind of hold back and you say, hey, I'm here to help you with the laptops that I cover. I cover the Samsung, the Apple, the Dell, or whatever laptops. And I'm just here to educate you on the different laptops that you possibly could get. There's another content creator, which can actually be even more successful, where 30% of their episode is not about the laptop. It's about themselves. So they start the video with, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about that new Dell laptop that just came out. But before we get into that, I want to remind you of how great of a creator I am. Not only do I talk about Dell laptops, I also talk about Apple products. I also talk about Samsung products. In fact, I just released 10 videos yesterday on a Samsung, and that's what makes me the best creator in this space. I am the best creator in this space because I'm the only one that tells you the truth about all the different laptops. Not only do I talk about the Samsung, I also talk about the Dell, and then I also talk about the Apple product. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the Apple product, but I want to remind you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because I am the best content creator in this space, and I tell you the truth. Now, in my last video, when we talked about the Samsung, I exposed to you the problems with buying that Samsung. While other creators do not talk about the exposure and the bad problems that come with that, that makes me authentic. That makes me better than other content creators. That makes me the best content creator in this space. And there's no one else that is good as me, because I'm the only one that's going to tell you the truth. Now, when it comes to the Apple products, I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about the new Apple products. Every single year, Apple continues to come out with brand new products. Then they change the port. No one else is talking about that. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about how the port constantly gets changed from USB-C to whatever Apple's coming out with next. And that's what they're really all about. Do you know why they're about that? Because they're only about greed. They're only about the money. No one else is talking about that. While everyone else is talking about how the product is advancing, I'm talking about the greed. And that's why you need to subscribe to this channel. And that's why we're talking about this video. Now, let's jump into that. See, the first several minutes of that content that I'm describing is meta talk. They're not actually talking about the product. They're talking about themselves. They're only talking about themselves. Why? They're brainwashing you into hitting that subscribe button because that's their goal. Their goal is just to get you to stay and listen to them. And their only goal is to get you to unsubscribe from other people because they are the best. Humility typically prevents most content creators from doing that because they're like, I'm just here to talk about the product. I'm not here to try to convince you that I'm a better person than the next person. I'm not here to try to convince you that I'm the best person in this space. I just want to be the best I can be by just being the best I can be. I don't want to constantly talk about and brag about the next thing I just bought. And so in the last 6 months, I've observed that. I'm like, you think I want to go live and talk about the pinball machine I just bought? I don't want to sit here and brag about things that I purchased. That's not the YouTube channel I wanted to create. I just wanted to be the guy that was talking about the product and educating people about the things that were coming out. Evidently, that makes me one-up kids. Evidently, that makes me too close to the company. I just wanted to be the channel that was talking about the product that I was excited about. Not the person that's talking about me. Not the person that's talking about how great I am. Not the person that says, I can afford to buy all these things. Not the person that says, I know how to program this. I know how to hack this. I know how to install this. I can afford this. I can buy this. Look what I just bought. Oh, another review video of something I bragged and purchased. It's not my channel.
No.
But I also believe that everyone has the ability to make whatever content they want to make. And I firmly believe in that. If Zohar wants to make content about Brad, let him. If Brad wants to make content about Zohar, let him. Because everyone has the right to make whatever content they want to make. If Rexer wants to make contents calling me one-up kits, he has the right. Everyone has the right to make whatever content they want to make. Is Rexer breaking the law? He's not breaking the law. Then he can make whatever he wants. It's not my job to convince the audience that I'm not the things that he claims. I don't need to justify to the public that I'm a good person to know that I'm a good person. I already know that. I have a good life. I have a good wife. I have a good family. That's all I need to know that I'm a good person. I don't need to convince anyone that I'm not the things that other people claim that I am. I don't rely on other people's opinion of me to make myself feel better. I don't make videos to try to convince people that I'm a better person to make me feel I'm a better person. I already know that because of the good deeds that I do.
And speaking of good deeds, I've kept this on the screen for a while, but Kongs R Us wants to know, what crazy things are you going to do at Comic-Con next week?
So exciting times. Kongs R Us and I went to CES beginning of the year, and he chatted about Comic-Con, so I'll be with him next week starting Wednesday. And you know something really cool that's happening? This next Saturday, we're going to Disneyland.
Nice.
And Zohar's coming as well. Yes, I'm taking Zohar to Disneyland. Taking B to Disneyland. And it's going to be amazing.
That should be fantastic. I hope you're gonna do some streams from Disneyland.
Maybe the goal is to hang out with friends.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Maybe we'll take some pictures, post it on Twitter. Or something.
I guess it's because the point I'm trying to make is that your audience considers you a friend, and so when you talk about something like that on such a profound level, and then just the idea of capping it all off with spending time with good friends at Disneyland, it's
Toxin says he's going to be at Disneyland next week, so we're there Saturday, July 22nd.
awesome.
If you're around, Toxin, I don't know if you're going that day. Let me check the calendar, double check. Yeah, July 22nd. We'll be at Disneyland. I mean, I think we're park hopping.
And console fanboy Zohar wants me to read this. Zod, please read this aloud for Justin. Justin, I promise you, the people that believe Rexer don't matter because they're too stupid to think for themselves. They don't matter. The real ones know you.
I know that, Zohar. It's fine. As you know, I've never had a problem with other content creators. I mean, there's been times where I did block Rexer on Twitter. But God dang it, I hate when people tag me. Like, if you're in the audience, don't tag me. Come on. Like, unless you're like, tag me if you literally want to like message me. Like, if you're like, hey, Justin, I just saw something that I thought you would like. And then I'll respond like, dude, that's really awesome. I really appreciate you tagging me on that. But if you tag like 50 people and me, what is that? What is that? Why are you doing that? It just sounds like you're trying to get noticed. Like, you wish you had more followers on Twitter, so you tag 50 people so that those people would respond and then their audience will like follow you or something? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, Zohar does that. I never understand it. Why do you tag 50 people? Like, I don't know. It's really weird. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me it's just
the whole Twitter social media.
Is it
thing?
just Twitter group chat?
I think it's just a Twitter thing. I mean, because especially if you put out a post that you want, unless you're saying it happens in like group chats.
No, I was wondering if maybe I shouldn't be so harsh about it. It's just Twitter's way of doing group chat. Like, you mentioned a whole bunch of people, so a whole bunch of people swarm. It's almost like a group chat, but it's not. It's
so that the people that you, a lot of times, even if somebody that you're following, particularly on Twitter, even if it's somebody that you're following and that person posts something, like for example, tonight, I posted on Twitter that I was going live and that you were going to be on my stream.
That's a perfect example of when you should use that mention.
And I would, so I tagged you, and of course, and then I did shout out to a few other people, just so that they knew, so that they were aware of it. It's almost like for me, I feel like it's just about making certain people aware of the posts who you want to know. So like, if you're saying something, if you're making a tweet or making a general tweet, you're basically interested in what these people have to say. So you're tagging them. So not necessarily that so they'll reply, but so that they can see the tweet. Because a lot of times if you see something on your feed, you might go past it and you're not tagged in it, so you won't always see it. Like, I've had people, oh, you didn't see the tweet from so-and-so? And I'm like, well, no, when was it posted? Oh, he posted it 3 days ago. Well, I'm following this person. How come I didn't see the tweet? And then I have to go down the feed, and I got so much on my feed, some stuff just goes right through the cracks. So if I want a specific person to see something that I posted for whatever reason, I'll tag that person.
Okay.
So I feel like there's a good reason to do it, but I understand like what you're saying about how it seems like some people just abuse it and just will tag somebody
This is
just
how I
to
see it.
tag them. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you're on Twitter and you want to tag 3 people. What's your motivation for tagging those 3 people? Imagine the post is, hey, I'd really love to get your opinion on this thing. Tag 3 people. So you're talking to those 3 people. You're like, hey, maybe I don't know you, but I'd really love to get some feedback on this. How does this look? What's your opinion on this? The point of that scenario that I'm making up is you're actually talking to those people. They are the subject of who you're reaching, but you're doing it publicly so other people can hear it. And you're like, that's fine. It's like a public post, but you're talking to those 3 people. So mention them. That's a scenario. There's another scenario where you're not talking to those 3 people. You're talking to random people on Twitter. And then you tag those 3 people. But the tweet is not directed at those 3 people. It's directed at you're like, look at me. Look at what great thing I did. Add 3 people. It feels to me that in that scenario, it's just like this clout chasing, like promotion marketing thing.
Cloud chasing promotion or validation from your 3 friends that you tagged when you said, hey, look at me.
What if they're not your 3 friends? So I get tags from like Nick Madsen on Twitter from occasion. Not always.
Okay.
Because I'm friends with him and I've met him in person, and there's this overlap of like he restores arcades, he mentions Retro Ralph a lot. They're very close, but sometimes he'll be doing a restoration that he knows I'm interested in, so he'll tag me. He really is including me because he's speaking to me and other people at the same time because we're friends. We know each other in real life. We met online, we've met in person. Or how about you mention me, but we've DM'd each other. We've Facebook Messenger each other. We've talked on the phone. We actually know each other. But then there's the DM or the mention of, I have no clue who this person is. I've never interacted with them. They've never commented on my videos. I've never responded to them. I have no clue who they are.
Yeah, and in those
they're not talking to me.
It's usually just somebody that, I don't know, wants your attention for whatever reason. And they know they're only going to get your attention if they tag you because they've never had any interactions with you. So that's what you're getting there.
My DMs are open if they want to become there's so many people on a daily basis that reach out to me that I know now because they just reached out and said, hey, I'd love to get your thoughts on, should I buy TMNT from Arcade 1UP or should I wait? And I respond to them and they respond to me. And I mean, I'll give you an example. Mike Evans, who's all over Facebook. I've chatted with him weekly for years. And it's just him telling me movies that he really enjoys. And I'm like, dude, I've never seen that movie. That's really cool. And then he's like, I spray paint the back of my arcades. I'm like, that's really cool. But I actually feel like I know him because I've chatted with him for years over like this you're doing. Oh, I'm doing this. I'm doing that. It's like a pin pal, so the internet is kind of like a pin pal thing. Steps Gaming. I chat with her offline. I met her in person. We've interacted. If she had mentioned me on Twitter, but she's speaking to me, I'd be like, oh, yeah, she just wanted me to know something that she's doing. She made a blast. She's not promoting, marketing herself to try to gain prominence because she, you know what I mean? It's just weird. It's the side of the social aspect of social media that is weird to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know you, but you're acting like we know each other. And then you want me to respond like we know each other when there's a ton of other people that I want to get to know or they want to get to know me. So we've interacted on a one-on-one basis. Does that make sense? It's like Ralph, like go back to Ralph. Like there's this history with Retro Ralph and I. Way before One Up Weekly. We were both YouTubers. I commented on his video. I think he commented on my video. I'd seen a video of him, and then he commented on one of my videos. So then I commented on his video. That eventually led to Messenger. That eventually led to calling each other on Messenger because we realized we had a lot in common. That led to people us exchanging phone numbers. We started texting daily. We started talking on the phone daily. We built this relationship. We started saying, man, this phone call that we had would have made a great podcast because we're sitting here talking about nerdy stuff. I wonder if there's an audience for that. Hey, I'd love to do a podcast. He's like, what's that? A podcast. Well, you can't do that on YouTube. Yeah, it's a thing. No, that's a thing for Apple. No, it's a video thing. Have you ever heard that? Retro Roundtable. Have you ever heard of that? No. Okay, fine. Let's try it. And then it turned into One Up Weekly. But what's really cool about that is I felt the reason why you say it's there's authenticity to One Up Weekly is because there was like months and months of us building a real friendship, daily talking on the phone like best friends before it's like the show was an excuse for us to talk. Do you know what I mean? We got to the point where we were like, we're YouTubers and we want to talk on the phone. Is there a way we can combine them?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I've seen that
and it did feel that way. It did have that organic quality to it that you're speaking of. And it's totally obvious to anybody who watches even one episode of One Up Weekly. And that type of chemistry you cannot fake. You have to have a legitimate friendship for that type of thing to flourish. And I think that's one of the main reasons why it was so devastating to a lot of people in this community when that ended.
I don't know, maybe that's a part of the reality of the show as well. It was a real friendship. And at a certain point, I don't want to say the friendship necessarily died, but that part of our relationship did. Where, I mean, what can you do? We both have busy lives, and we did a podcast together while he was single. And we did a podcast in his life while he had the time to be able to dedicate that. You got to remember, you go look at Ralph's channel, and it has dramatically changed since the One Up Weekly period.
Oh,
he used to bust out videos like every 2 days, every 4 days. Big, relatively production quality videos that took him a lot of time to make. And so be able to dedicate a show every Sunday that the majority of the shows that we did were based on conversations that we had during the week. So it was us like during the week talking about stuff that we were really interested in and then going, okay, let's write that down. That's a good topic for the podcast. Let's not speak on that topic more. Well, let's explore that topic further on the show. We already got to like a plateau of a point where we're like kind of understand how you feel and I feel, but we haven't taken the conversation to the next level. That's a great entertainment piece, and let's just organically explore that further. So we would talk about like the topic, if you will, throughout the week. You familiar with this thing going on? I'm familiar with that thing going on. We're just kind of like familiar with the subject. And then we would have a conversation about it later. And so One Up Weekly was really a lot of work if you consider it what it took to get to that show. The show we winged it, if you will, but it had the shows where if we didn't talk through the week weren't as good. Does that make sense? So it was almost like we were rehearsing for the show daily before the show through I'm not kidding, like hours and hours of conversations every day. We both were in this weird position during the pandemic where we were working from home and the companies we worked for were scrambling for like how to evolve during the pandemic. And we were like, early on, there was like very few Zoom meetings. Just both of us could literally work while we're on the phone. Like I could do my job while we're talking, and he could do his job while we're talking. And we would just have conversations constantly. And then the show would be great. And we would look back and be like, oh, it's just us having the end of the conversation. It's the last chapter of those conversations for the whole week. It was great. And then there was a certain point where like my job totally changed, his job totally changed, and it just wasn't possible anymore. And so it was like 2 years of heavy amount of like friendship, growth, conversations, a ton of love, passion. And then like it just wasn't possible anymore.
Yeah. Mystery Encoder says here, I'm a Console Kits fan because he actually knows what the F he's talking about at a technical level. Well, yeah.
He's a nice guy.
Definitely.
I don't think I'm anywhere near. When we were on that show together afterwards, Mr. Encoder and I talked a lot, and I really appreciate his level. Like, I did anti-piracy and hacking in the kind of space that he's in, but not at the level that he's at. I did a lot of fun hacks. I don't think I've told Mr. Encoder all the hacks that I was involved with, but it was hacking the hackers and finding the holes in the products that hackers were making. And they were fun because it's always fun to be like, did the hacker think of this? Oh, they did. But did they think of this? And then you would find it and be like, ha, you messed up right here. You left a hole and I can exploit it. Let me spend a week trying to figure out how to exploit it. Now I'm in. That's fun. And I learned a lot, and I apply that knowledge in my job. There's a lot of things that I do on my job that are much more secure because I'm trying to fill the holes that I, as a hacker, would have tried to exploit. I don't know. So just I really appreciate Mr. Encoder, the way he thinks. It's very much try to exploit and abuse technology. But really, what is that? It's just knowing a system so well and knowing a system so well that I'm trying to put it. There's got to be like an analog to it. Mr. Encoder said an amazing thing. Let me repeat what he said on the call that I've thought of so many times. Some companies spend so much time on security. That is like, but security is an illusion. How is security an illusion? You'll spend so much time trying to make sure that your front door is secure when there's a brick that can break through your window.
Yeah, that was quite the statement.
Yeah. And I remember there being a TV show where there was a guy that was like breaking into people's houses. And it was like, that was the TV show. He would go to a person's house and they would say, you can't get into my house. And they're like, okay, we want you to leave, go to dinner, whatever. And then this guy who's a professional person that tries to break into someone's house, he's going to break into your house. But don't worry about it. He's not going to steal anything. And then when you come back, he's going to tell you how he did it. But not only is he going to do that, we're going to fix your house so it is more secure. And then he's going to try to break into your house again, and he won't be able to break in because he fixed your house. It was a great show. There was like 2 seasons of it. And that's like the real analog of hacking, I think. It's that guy would just be like, break in their window. He's like, they didn't think about, I'm gonna use the material around your house to break into your house. There's a hammer over here by the garage. I'm gonna climb this fence, get onto the second story, and then I'm gonna tap open the window and sneak in, and I'm in. And that's a hacker. They're like, they know the tricks of how to break a computer system because they know how they're built. They know the vulnerabilities. They know the thing that people forget to lock. And that's the upstairs window. So they go for the upstairs window. And so he described how he hacked the arcade. And it's totally, did they check that the upstairs window is locked? So the first thing you do is you check and see if the front door is unlocked. Ah, the front door is locked. So they did think of that. Ooh, the garage. I bet the garage isn't locked. I bet you could just lift it straight up. With enough power, you could break through the garage door opener and you're in. Because they totally didn't lock the door inside the garage. Oh, they did lock the garage. Okay, did they lock the bedroom window upstairs? That's all Mystery Encoder did. And what's really cool and what I appreciate about Mystery Encoder is it's like he found a way into the house, but it was like try to break through this door, try to open up this. If you do these 3 things, then you can go down the chimney. And it's like now he's in. So that his hack wasn't obvious. It wasn't like front door stuff. It was, and the mod that he's coming out with basically does that work for you in an automated way. It'll boom, you're in.
So I got to ask you this question. What is your favorite aspect of the home arcade community?
4x3.
That's actually a fair answer. I'm not going to lie. I mean,
what is your favorite aspect? Not aspect ratio.
Not aspect ratio, but like I said, that was a fair answer. I have to say.
It's my favorite aspect of the home arcade.
Mystery Encoder says I tag Elon Musk in every tweet I make because I want his opinion.
Let's see. My favorite aspects of home arcade. This is tough. I'm trying to. It's not difficult because I'm trying to find the answer. I'm trying to find the accurate answer, and I've been in this space for enough time that it's like I recognize that my initial answer may be just surface level. Hold on.
Okay. Mystery Encoder also echoes, I still miss One Up Weekly. Yep. Definitely.
Okay. I think I know the answer. When Arcade 1UP first announced that they were going to release a product, I first started to see information about that on various Metal Jesus type channels. And I was intrigued, but there wasn't a lot of information. At first, measurements of how tall the machine were unknown. And then we'd see a picture of it being pretty small. And so it started to come out. But then my very first knee-jerk reaction to purchase one was because of a deal. There was a Pac-Man available for $250 or $300. And I went there, and then there was a Street Fighter for like $225 that was on sale. That kind of got me hooked. And then since then, it's really just the excitement of what's new, what's coming. There's definitely like joy in that. And I think that's true. I see that everywhere. Even all channels, all community members, whether you love Arcade 1UP or you hate Arcade 1UP, you tune in to learn what they're doing next. And it's exciting. And I'm addicted to that news cycle. whether I'm making content about the news cycle or just watching it. And I've been in both positions where I strive to be first to give you the news, or or I was too busy and I talked about it a week later. There's even a time where I've talked about the news a month later. Just because I was playing with that. Could I talk about a subject a month later, and would people be interested in my opinion if it's delayed? And they would. Like,
Yeah.
It's almost like the second wave of like, oh, there's a ton of information coming about a product and a ton of people are making videos and talking about it. Now it's dead. The topic is dead. Can I revive it by now talking about it? And then will other people talk about it and keep it alive? And many times I could do that as an influencer. And that was kind of fun to like play with that, to be like, it's a form of entertainment. It's like, am I good enough to do a stream about a topic that's dead? While it's sometimes more easier to join the news wave or create the news wave or ride the wave.
Well, you didn't do it. You didn't do an NBA Jam Deluxe video. Just saying. I mean,
yeah, I remember. Yeah, there's many times where I've bought a product, sat on it. There's still products that I have that I haven't made a video on, that I have, that are old news, that I constantly go, could I make a video on it now? It's dead. The topic's dead. So if it does well, it's all me.
I want to see.
I brought that. I didn't ride anyone's wave.
I want to see you do a video on the My Arcade Retro Champ.
Oh, I got a couple of my arcades.
Anyway. I got that too.
So,
speaking of a dead product.
Yeah. But even now, like, Time Crisis is imminent.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how it's marketed, see how it's priced, and see how people react to it. And I'm excited to see, even with the way that the home arcade space is right now, where it's definitely changed and people are limited on what they're willing to buy, what they're willing to pay, and what they're willing to give up space for. Will Time Crisis be good enough to convince people to pay to put it in a certain space, and they may have to like sell something or make room for it? I'm still interested in, when someone does a review on it, will they make a mistake? Will they, sometimes they improve, sometimes they do. And I don't care. Like, they've got failed products that I enjoy. Like NFL Blitz. It's a failed product.
But
it's great. I love it.
But I gotta ask you, is your love for NFL Blitz because of NFL Blitz, or because of the nostalgia you have associated with NFL Blitz from the way that the NFL Blitz cabinet was introduced to you in real life through the experience you had in Chicago?
No. I'll sit down and play NFL Blitz and I'm reminded of Madden. I didn't play like a ton of NFL Blitz. I played Madden, but football is pretty straightforward. You pick your play, you back up, you toss the ball, you try to get yardage, and you repeat. Or you play the defense. So, again, I didn't play Blitz a ton in the arcade or on the N64 when I was a kid. I played Madden a lot on Super Nintendo, I don't know, PlayStation, whatever systems it came out on. And that was very much like a mindless game. You're like, hurry up. I don't know. The way I played is like, hurry up. That play looks good. Okay, now I'm either gonna rush it or I'm gonna toss it. I'm gonna find someone and throw it to him, and hopefully I'll get a touchdown. That's it. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And Blitz is a dedicated machine that gives me that. I can just turn it on and do that, and be like, I can play that game. And I've thought a lot about this. Like, Arcade 1-Up is a dedicated console. There's value in a dedicated console. You know why? Turn it on, play. Like, I've even thought deeply on it. Like, what if I bought 5 pies and only put exactly 10 games on each pie? And then I got 10 little Dell monitors and 10 chairs and 10 little desks, or 1 desk, and line them up. That has value. Do you know why? Boom, turn that one on, play Blitz. Turn that one on and play Street Fighter. Like, it's just ready to go. Or do 1 pie and make that menu so good you can get to that game that you want to play right away. Put a sign up, make a button, take a Stream Deck.
All killer, no filler, basically, right?
Yeah, imagine. Yeah. I think that's the way to do it. Take a little Stream Deck like this, have an icon on it that's like Blitz, Street Fighter, Star Wars, whatever your favorite game is. You press that button, that game is in front of you instantly, and you just start playing. Because you know what? You're going to have to do the dishes in like 5 minutes. You're just putting a quick game in. Dedicated full-size arcade machines, you got to power it on. You got to wait for the fan to come on. The game's got to boot. It's only got 1 game on it. I don't know. Pinball, plug that. Boom. Plunger. Accessibility. Speed. Get to that game. Get that fix. Get that nostalgia shot in your arm as fast as possible.
10 little Dells.
10 little Dells.
Wow. Well, I guess, I don't know. I mean, we've been going for over 3 hours. Yeah. I want to say, I want to start off by wrapping this up. I want to start off by saying thank you, Justin, for being here. I appreciate this.
Thank you for having me on.
A lot of fun, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. And I'm so happy that you've come out of things with this appreciation for something new that wasn't really in your wheelhouse before. The whole pinball thing is fascinating to me. That whole story you told. I mean, wow, the connection to it and the way that you talked about it with the enthusiasm. I deeply appreciated that, because like you, I'm not a pinball guy. Never was.
I still feel like I'm not, because I go talk to other pinball guys and they have knowledge of games, and if I go watch a tournament or a competition, they're way above my skills. But I can't deny that it's all I think about. And like, even work is stressful right now, and I'm like, I don't know, it pays for my pinball machines, and
pays for your pinball machine.
I even told my boss, I was all like, yeah, the company's doing a lot of reorg stuff. He's like, well, how are you getting through it? I'm like, I don't know, I'm play some pinball games. He's like, okay. He's like, okay, so we got this new possible position for you next year. Maybe we can groom you to be this type of level position. And I'm just like, okay, will that help pay for my pinball habit? It would? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm in. I don't know. I know, it's just weird.
10 Little Dells sounds like a nice arcade spot. Yeah,
that's pretty good. That's a good name.
That's a good one. Good job on that one, Toxin. And yeah, it's the arcade band. Yes. And this is the escape from work for sure.
There you go, man.
Yeah, man. So I guess you talked about the big Disneyland trip coming up, and Comic-Con and all this great stuff. So ordinarily I would ask, what do you got coming up on your channel? But it sounds like you're still
Still on a break.
Hiatus. So
Little hiatus. I got a couple trips coming up, and then but I feel ideas coming. I don't think I'm stepping away from YouTube completely. I almost made a video recently. There was all of this repair stuff that I was doing on a pinball machine, and I decided not to film it. I was like, I'm going to keep this one to myself. It's just a personal, but it was close. It was close to film, and I was almost going to go live and be like, I got to tell you this story. It's really great. This is what happened. It was a good moment at the end where I got it fully repaired, and it's great. But I was like, I'll keep that one to myself. But I feel like if another one comes up, or there's some other ideas that I have for fun content, I thought I could stay away forever. Like that came up, but I don't think I can.
Nah, nobody can. It's always fun to take a break, but eventually you do come back and people will be glad when you do. And I feel like this is the best comment we could possibly end this stream on from Mask of Shy. It's always good to take the time to be inspired again.
There you go.
Agree 100% with that. So thank you everybody for watching. This has been Late Night Q&A with ZodWriter featuring Justin from Console Kits. Episode 82 of Late Night Q&A. Can't believe I've done almost nearly 100 episodes of this thing. But we're going to keep going. I'm going to try to keep getting prominent people in the home arcade community. That's kind of the thing that I'm on now. I want to keep talking to everybody and getting all these different perspectives. So thank you again, Justin.
Yep.
Thank you again to the chat. It's definitely been a great show. Good night, everybody.
We'll see you.